Chapter 460. The arsenal was a representative dimensional space in Zhongji province, which was rare in Beijiang province. Before Second Last decided to target the arsenals around Dashi City, she searched for the arsenals near Jiangbin City, including some in Zhongji province. She then conducted some internal investigations and comparisons. In the end, Second Last chose Dashi City in Beijiang province. Holy ground like the one in the snowfield of Jianan village was really rare. The gates of the holy ground in the arsenal were almost always open to the public. Therefore, the two of them chose the nearest arsenal and set their targets at Platinum Nostalgia and Platinum Dawn. It would only take more than an hour to drive from Jiangbin City to Dashi City. The reason why the Provincial League wasn't held in Dashi City, but the remote Guanlin City, Zhongxing County, was mainly because the arsenals around Dashi City were highly developed and there were a large number of people there to train. It was obviously not a wise move to seal off the place where there was a huge influx of gold. Guanlin City was located at the border between China and Russia, which was relatively remote and had fewer trainees. Hence, there would be fewer losses if they sealed it off. Jiang Shao and Second Last soon arrived at the west of Dashi City, which was connected to Zhongji province. The two of them flashed their identification documents with ease, and Second Last brought Jiang Shao into the arsenal with the same reason, in a bid to see the so-called holy ground. Jiang Shao had to admit that entering the arsenal from a world of ice and snow was indeed a pleasant experience. It was as if it was early summer, and the air was fresh and the environment was pleasant. Jiang Shao carried the spare giant sword and changed into the camouflage military uniform that he had brought with him. He then followed Second Last in. According to the soldiers, the holy ground was located 200 kilometers away from the entrance. However, Jiang Shao felt that the 200 kilometers there would be much easier to run than the 170 kilometers in the volcano. It was because the weather there was simply too good, and running there was simply a form of enjoyment. On the other hand, running in the volcano would be like a vacuum cleaner, and even the dust-proof mask couldn't change that fact. The hazy sky, the billowing smoke of the volcano, and the scattering volcanic ash. Jiang Shao felt that he should take a shower again at the thought of it. However, the volcanic dimensional space was very suitable as a desktop wallpaper. The background was really desolate, poignant, and magnificent. It had a unique and contradictory sense of beauty. The savage witches in the arsenal were easy to recognize. Most of them wore animal skin clothes and shoes. Most savages only used leaves and other plants to make grass skirts. However, the savage witches were obviously the same as the savage wizards. They were all superior creatures. Besides, as one of the few barbarians that could cast spells from a distance, as long as you saw a barbarian standing behind other barbarians without a bow and arrow, even if this barbarian wasn't wearing animal skin clothes and shoes, you would know that he was a barbarian wizard. Dashi City was considered a relatively large city in Beijiang province, and the arsenal there was comparable to that of the snowfield in Jianan village. There was an endless stream of awakened who went there to train. Jiang Shao and Second Last sprinted all the way and didn't stay at the entrance for long. Today was the second day of the Lunar New Year. However, there were still so many awakened ones who came here to train. Star warriors really had to go through all kinds of hardships in order to rise to the top. There was no such thing as sunrise and sunset in the arsenal. The two of them ran for a long time until they encountered a group of ape ghouls led by the ape ghoul king. Jiang Shao knew that it was time to fill the savage witch's star beads. Jiang Shao and Second Last didn't disturb the ape ghouls that were sleeping lazily because Jiang Shao was racing against time. Second Last had the ability to kill the ape ghoul king in seconds, but she was there to train Jiang Shao and would only help him with the star beads. She wasn't a fighter or a pet. Well, Jiang Shao had always regarded her as the latter. The two of them sneaked past the group of ape ghouls, and not long after, Second Last discovered some movement in the bushes in front of them. Jiang Shao looked in the direction that Second Last was pointing at and vaguely saw some figures moving in the bushes behind the trees. Huh, have we encountered a group of savages? Are these savages going to ambush the ape ghouls? Jiang Shao was overjoyed. The fact that there was an ape ghoul king among the ape ghouls that had the ability to ambush the ape ghouls indicated that there would definitely be high-level savage wizards among the savages in the forest. Jiang Shao pulled out the giant sword from his back and turned to look at Second Last. I'm going. I'll kill them in seconds. What else is there to say? Second Last raised her eyebrows. She knew that Jiang Shao probably hadn't discovered the group of savages in the forest because he was speaking in such a manner. That was indeed what Jiang Shao did. He held onto his sword and dashed into the dense forest. There is a saying in the art of war, don't enter a forest. Jiang Shao thought, ancestor is right. When Jiang Shao stabbed a caveman to death with his sword, he was almost turned into a porcupine. At the moment when Jiang Shao and the savage man were fighting, a group of female archers who were hiding in the dark drew their bows and arrows one after another, after which the arrows emitted a faint purple glow. Clearly, they had been imbued with the star technique, hatred. They then shot at Jiang Shao. However, Jiang Zhao's endurance was of platinum quality, so the arrows didn't penetrate his skin. Arrows fell to the ground one after another, but there were still some arrows that pierced through his clothes and hung on his body. Second Last had clearly expected that to happen, but Jiang Shao got a great shock. There are actually so many savages lying in ambush in the forest. If they didn't shoot arrows, Jiang Shao would have really thought that they were a small group. According to the number of arrows, there were at least 20 to 30 female savage archers among the savages. The arrows became the signal for the start of the battle, and with the shrieks of a caveman, the forest in front of Jiang Shao seemed to have come alive. Groups of savages ran out one after another, and there were even halos beneath their feet. Jiang Shao was overjoyed. Savage sorceresses. At this moment, Jiang Shao was simply a shield warrior. Strong, bold. Jiang Shao didn't care about the arrows that were shooting at him from all directions at all. He simply walked around the perilous battlefield like he was taking a stroll in the park. He was extremely arrogant. The arrows hit his body one after another, tearing his clothes and making crisp sounds when they came into contact with his skin. They then fell to the ground at Jiang Zhao's feet. Found it! Jiang Shao finally saw a savage sorceress whose eyes were glistening with a demonic purple glow and was dressed in a bee-skin skirt. Jiang Shao gripped his sword tightly and strode forward excitedly. He moved around the savages and slashed left and right. Then, Jiang Shao seemed to be impatient with the savages who were swarming towards him. He slashed his giant sword horizontally and cleared the area in front of him. After the blade that was mixed with green glow, everyone had to retreat 20 meters away, regardless of whether they died or not. The savage sorceress got a great shock and watched as a hedgehog tore through the line of defense in front of her and dashed toward her. The savage sorceress turned around and fled. Jiang Shao cast a blessing at her, and the savage sorceress suddenly froze and her legs became disorderly. Due to inertia, the savage sorceress fell to the ground. Behind Jiang Shao, Second Last's ears twitched slightly, and she turned around all of a sudden. Roar! With a roar, a huge figure stepped down and crushed the savage sorceress into a pile of flesh. Golden King, great ape ghoul king that could fly in the sky and burrow. Jiang Shao had no idea how high the ape ghoul king jumped or how far it flew. He only knew that the savage sorceress was trampled to death by the ape ghoul king that had descended from the sky. Not only was she trampled to death, but the ape ghoul king also grabbed the savage sorceress's head and stuffed it into its mouth. I'm going to beat you up. What the F***CK? Jiang Shao was so infuriated by the ape ghoul king that he used a blessing on it. It was not a small blessing, but a platinum blessing. The huge and holy pillar of light descended from the sky, and the ape ghoul king tilted its body to dodge it. However, at the next moment, the ape ghoul king made a strange guttural sound. It was because the huge platinum blessing pillar of light had a splashing effect. The thick pillar of light continued to descend, and the overflowing blessing starlight splashed out, landing on the ape ghoul king that had just dodged. Just as the ape ghoul king was shivering in comfort. The platinum blessing descended again and enveloped it. This time, the ape ghoul king's voice was continuous, and its strange cries filled the forest. The savages in front of Jiang Shao and the ape ghouls behind him seemed to be a little confused at this moment. The battlefield actually fell into a state of stillness. It wasn't until one of the ape ghouls activated the star technique brutality that the entire battlefield became alive again. Second Last had been standing behind Jiang Shao to protect him, but the battle was no longer about the two of them. Instead, it was a battle between two groups. Clearly, compared to the two humans, they hated each other more. They reckoned that the two large groups should have fought many times. However, with Jiang Shao restraining the ape ghoul king, the savages were having fun. They formed small groups and tried their best to kill the flying monsters. While observing the situation, Second Last pulled out the arrows from Jiang Zhao's back and threw them on the ground. Jiang Shao stretched his hand out, and the platinum blessing continued to descend. He then strode towards the ape ghoul king. Tisk tisk. Jiang Shao couldn't help but be secretly astonished by his own star technique. He rarely went all out, but the free behavior just now really infuriated him. They were in a deserted forest. Since Second Last didn't stop him, Jiang Shao could go all out. Jiang Shao looked at his platinum blessing and the sparkles that were splattering in all directions. He couldn't help but shiver. Wasn't this too frightening? The huge figure in the huge pillar of light had already collapsed to the ground and was no longer howling. The former ape ghoul king was full of vigor, and its roar was earth-shattering. The ape ghoul king was now lying limply on the ground like a puddle of mud. Jiang Shao stopped his blessing, and Second Last, who was behind him, couldn't help but turn around to look. Second Last was initially expressionless, but she had a peculiar expression on her face after seeing the scene. There was a huge figure lying limp in front of Jiang Shao. It was lying on its back in the shape of the word, and its huge eyes seemed to have lost their luster. Its mouth was slightly open, and its red tongue was sticking out of its mouth, drooling all the way to the ground and dripping with stinky saliva. Even when Jiang Shao walked towards it, the flying ape ghoul king didn't react at all. Jiang Shao held the giant sword and patted the ape ghoul king's furry head. However, the ape ghoul king still didn't react at all. Jiang Shao was taken aback by his own blessing. Yes, Jiang Shao was actually shocked by himself. He scratched his buzz-cut hair and turned to look at Second Last. Did I kill it? Second Last was speechless. Chapter 461. Jiang Shao half-knelt beside the furry head of the ape ghoul king and gestured at the neck of the ape ghoul king with the giant sword in his hand. All of a sudden, the ape ghoul king moved. Its huge head tilted slightly, but its eyes were still empty. Its big tongue was also retracted, and stinky saliva was still dripping from it. Jiang Shao hurriedly placed his hand on the ape ghoul king's large eyes and closed them. At the same time, Jiang Shao hummed softly, "The moon is bright, the wind is still, the leaves cover the window lattice." Second Last was speechless. Jiang Shao slowly raised the giant sword and said, "My baby, close your eyes and sleep in your dreams." Second Last was speechless. On the chaotic and noisy battlefield, it was accompanied by a melodious song. He raised his hand. The sword fell. Screech. The ape ghoul king suddenly struggled violently, but did not scream because Jiang Zhao's giant sword had slashed its neck and shattered its throat. However, due to the fact that the ape ghoul king had a strong defense, Jiang Zhao's giant sword only penetrated a quarter of its body and did not manage to sever its head at all. Seeing that the situation was getting out of control, Second Last had no choice but to help. Second Last stepped on the back of the giant sword and stomped it forcefully like a guillotine. The large head of the ape ghoul king was finally separated from its body. Jiang Zhao's face was splattered with blood, and he smiled awkwardly at Second Last. Second Last suddenly turned around and grabbed the arrow that was flying toward her. She exerted some force and broke the arrow while staring at a female savage archer in the depths of the forest. The savage archer quickly hid behind a tree. She seemed to be quite frightened. For pairs of savage sorcerers, fill them with star beads, and let's leave this place, second last said hoarsely as she threw the arrow on the ground. For pairs? 4 sorcerers and 4 witches? So, where's the witch that was eaten by the ape ghoul king just now? Is she single? Is that why she was eaten? Jiang Shao collected the star bead of the ape ghoul king and carefully looked at the battlefield. The number of people on both sides was far greater than Jiang Shao had imagined. The battlefield was too chaotic. Under second last guidance, Jiang Shao finally found a savage sorceress. Without another word, he set off. Jiang Shao sprinted frantically and smashed the savages and ape ghouls that were blocking his way. He then shot a beam of countercurrent light towards second last and the savage sorceress. At the next moment, Jiang Shao saw the savage witch's trembling body and her shrill screams. Savages had sharp teeth and claws to begin with, and their eyes shone with a demonic purple light. As for the witch in front of him, during the evolution process, the demonic light in her eyes became even more intense. Her eyes were like 2 searchlights, and wherever her gaze landed, there was a sea of purple. Then the savage witch grew up. Just like the lava ghoul which that had broken through to the gold quality, its body had expanded to more than 5 meters. It was comparable to the ape ghoul king and was just like a small giant. Second last suddenly said, "Close your eyes." Eyes closed? In this chaotic battlefield? You want me to close my eyes? Shut up. Second last voice was unprecedentedly stern as she spat out those 2 words. Ding! Jiang Shao felt a sharp pain in the back of his head as an arrow came out of nowhere and hit the back of his head. The sharp arrow in his head made a crisp sound before falling to the ground. Jiang Shao rubbed the back of his head aggrievedly and turned around, only to see a savage archer sneaking up on him. The savage archer froze for a moment too. She initially thought that she would take revenge, but she discovered that the human actually sat on the ground and even closed his eyes. More than 10 minutes later, Jiang Shao and second last left the battlefield. At the same time, Jiang Shao saw that Nostalgia and Dawn had also reached gold quality level 5 in his internal star map. His Nostalgia and Dawn were originally gold quality level 1, 7 out of 10, but after absorbing the savage sorcerer star bead, they became gold quality level 2. Hence, the 7 silver quality savage sorceress star beads that he had absorbed were considered wasted. However, it didn't matter. Those were just trivial matters, especially after half a day. When Jiang Shao obtained the 9th gold quality savage sorcerer star bead, he was in a great mood. Finally, his star map was about to be filled with platinum. TSK, my identity is really getting more and more distinguished. At this moment, Jiang Shao and second last were in a cave, taking a break. Jiang Shao eagerly grabbed the star bead and absorbed it. The gold quality star bead also shattered and turned into starlight that fused into Jiang Shao's body. Platinum Nostalgia. Platinum Dawn. Jiang Shao immediately felt that something was amiss. It was because the introduction of Nostalgia had changed drastically. The introduction of the former gold quality Nostalgia was Halo technique, allows the units within the range of the halo to attack with the effect of hatred and absorb the enemy's vitality and star power to replenish itself. The introduction of Platinum Nostalgia was Halo technique, allows the units within the range of the halo to attack with the effect of hatred and absorb the enemy's vitality and star power, or give the enemy's vitality and star power. Jiang Shao was dumbfounded. What does that mean? Not only can this halo absorb the enemy's vitality and mana, but can also give the enemy vitality and mana? Has this halo become reversible? That's a qualitative change, isn't it? The introduction of Dawn did not change at all. It was still Nostalgia Halo, always appreciates and pursues the glimmer of light. Jiang Shao leaned against the stone wall of the cave in a daze and slid to the ground, frowning as he carefully read the words on the introduction. At the side, second last leaned against the entrance of the cave and observed the movements outside without disturbing Jiang Shao. All of a sudden, second last discovered that a dark golden halo appeared beneath her feet. The dark golden halo was about 50 centimeters away from her military boots and enveloped her. Besides, the dark golden halo was constantly surging towards her feet from the outside. It was a beautiful scene. Second last turned around and looked at Jiang Xiao, who was deep in thought. Jiang Xiao also turned around and said, "Come over and hit me." Second last raised her eyebrows and strode over. Seeing that second last was walking over, Jiang Xiao hurriedly added, "Be gentle." Second last was speechless. Jiang Xiao smiled awkwardly and said, "Hee." Second last walked towards Jiang Xiao, bent down, curled her index finger, and gently tapped Jiang Xiao's head. All of a sudden, second last felt that something was amiss, because when she tapped Jiang Xiao's head, she actually discovered that the star power in her body seemed to have left her and surged into Jiang Xiao's body. No, second last acutely discovered that it was not just the star power, but also the exhaustion of stamina. Stamina should be included in the scope of vitality. Jiang Xiao raised his hand and punched second last's calf. The pain was nothing to her, but second last was surprised to discover that there was a trace of vitality and star power surging into her body. Second last frowned slightly and said, "The effect of nostalgia is reversed. Instead of absorbing star power, it's giving star power." Jiang Xiao scratched his head and said, "It can be reversed. However, there's a problem. It can't be treated differently. Either all the targets within the range of the halo will absorb star power from the enemy, or all the targets will give star power to the enemy." Even second last, who was knowledgeable, clicked her tongue in amazement. What kind of strange advancement effect is this? Poisonous, right? You're beating people up and healing them at the same time? Jiang Xiao said, "Dawn." "Huh." A clock-like time scale suddenly appeared beneath their feet, and the dark golden lines were glistening. All of a sudden, the dark golden scale beneath their feet turned bright gold and began rotating clockwise. Jiang Xiao stood up with a frown and carefully felt the magical star technique. A few seconds later, the clockwise scale beneath second last's feet slowed down and finally stopped. No, it didn't stop. The speed of the scale's rotation gradually increased, but it wasn't clockwise anymore, but counterclockwise. All of a sudden, Jiang Xiao got excited and said, "Hit me again." Second last stretched her hand out and flicked Jiang Xiao's head. A trace of star power and stamina surged into Jiang Xiao's body. Jiang Xiao raised his hand and flicked second last's head too. A trace of star power and stamina also surged into Jiang Xiao's body. Second last's eyes widened slightly. The two of them were stepping on the same halo, but they got different effects. She lowered her head and looked at the counterclockwise scale beneath her feet, then at the clockwise scale beneath Jiang Xiao's feet. She seemed to have figured out the logic behind it. Gulp! Jiang Xiao's Adam's apple squirmed. He was indeed a toxic healer, but the effect was too toxic, wasn't it? Jiang Xiao said, "Let's go catch an ape ghoul and try it out." Second last tilted her head at the entrance of the cave and said, "There's a team of savages." Jiang Xiao walked out quickly, only to see the swordsman in the forest not far away. Jiang Xiao dashed forward while activating nostalgia. The radius of the halo had also increased significantly. It was originally 40 meters, but now it had probably expanded to 60 meters. The dark golden halo of nostalgia appeared beneath the feet of the four swordsmen, after which the time scale appeared and began rotating counterclockwise. Jiang Xiao plunged into the group of swordsmen and did not fight. Instead, he simply got beaten up. The swordsman wielded a stone sword and slashed at Jiang Xiao maniacally, making clanging sounds. However, they could not break Jiang Xiao's defense at all and could only tear his clothes apart. However, every time the savages attacked, they would replenish Jiang Xiao's stamina and give him some star power. Jiang Xiao hugged his head and squatted down to defend, while the counterclockwise scale beneath the swordsman's feet sped up. The savages attacked with similar strength, but as the speed of the time scale increased, they would give Jiang Xiao more vitality and star power every time they attacked. Jiang Xiao, who was being beaten up, felt more and more comfortable. On the other hand, The savages who were beating up Jiang Shao found it harder and harder to exert their star power. Star power abundance has leveled up. Silver quality level 4. Jiang Shao was dumbfounded. Did I level up after being beaten up? While Jiang Shao was bewildered, one of the savages was so tired that he was panting heavily. There was no need to say anything about their physical fitness. How could that be? How could they be so tired? Jiang Shao, who was surrounded and kicked by the savages, maintained the posture of hugging his head and squatting down to defend himself, enjoying the beating. He remained calm and composed. In fact, he even felt like laughing. After a while, one of the savages stopped and bent down with his hands on his knees while panting heavily. His face was covered in perspiration. After one of them stopped, the other 3 stopped too. Their stone knives were broken. Their fists were aching, their feet were aching, their bodies were sore, and their limbs were powerless. Jiang Shao finally raised his head and looked at the 4 savages who were panting heavily. He couldn't help but laugh out loud. When the 4 savages heard Jiang Zhao's laughter, they were all frightened out of their wits. They did not have high IQ and could not figure out what was going on, but they knew that the situation was extremely dangerous. They hurriedly turned around and limped towards the depths of the forest while supporting each other. At the entrance of the cave, second last, who was leaning against the stone wall, couldn't help but hold her forehead with one hand when she saw that. He's poisonous. He's indeed poisonous. Jiang Shao stood up and patted the dust off his body suavely, after which he watched the 4 savage brothers scamper away. At this moment, there was only one sentence in Jiang Zhao's mind. Everything that can't kill me will make me stronger. When it came to Jiang Shao, it didn't have anything to do with the hardships and setbacks of life. It was just a literal meaning. As long as you can't kill me with a single blow, the more you hit me, the stronger I will become. Chapter 462. 2 days later, Jiang Shao and second last returned to Earth. Jiang Shao had gained a lot from this trip. Not only did he obtain the last platinum star slot and turn all the star slots on a star map into a charming platinum color, but he also made plans for his future and put them into action. What actions? There were another 14 creatures of other dimensions in Jiang Zhao's disaster ruins, savage witches. The savage witches, who had sharp fangs and purple eyes that resembled searchlights, were now fighting with the lava ghoul witches. Jiang Zhao's act of rearing pigs was fully sponsored by Second Last. Rearing pigs was very different from rearing venomous witches. Rearing venomous witches was like throwing hundreds of reptiles into a vat, where the larger ones would eat the smaller ones. After a period of time, there would be an elimination competition to determine the strongest king. However, rearing pigs was different. There was no need for any casualties. They would just be reared and slaughtered when they were fattened. Due to the special characteristics of the lava ghouls and savage witches, they both had the ability to last and recover, but they lacked the ability to kill in one blow. Hence, they would constantly train and strengthen themselves in the disaster ruins to fight a fruitless battle. Jiang Shao was once afraid that the entry of the savage witches would disrupt the balance in the disaster ruins, and that was indeed the case. Although Jiang Shao did not enter the shadow ruins of calamity, Second Last did. After she came out, she explained to Jiang Shao that the creatures of other dimensions were no longer fighting on their own. Instead, they were divided into 3 groups. The group of gold-quality creatures had a certain level of intelligence. Although it was not high, it was enough for them to form an alliance. Each of the 3 groups had 8 to 10 creatures of other dimensions, and the composition of the teams was also considered to be a mix of good and bad. They were not formed by their own clansmen. That situation was suddenly formed after the savage witches, who had the halo of nostalgia, entered the team. There was almost no break-in period, which made Jiang Shao secretly amazed. The characteristics of the creatures of other dimensions were very strange, and the 2 auxiliary creatures also showed a special situation to Jiang Shao. The 3 teams were balanced, restrained, and attacked each other. Second last was most worried that the two teams would suddenly form an alliance and eliminate one of them. After all, the composition of their teams had clearly shown that they had the intelligence to form an alliance. Therefore, she gave Xiao Xiao a task. As the only platinum creature in the Scourge Ruins, it had extremely powerful damage output, high HP, and high defense. Under the supervision of Little God, no accidents were allowed to happen. However, Jiang Xiao had no idea when the creatures of other dimensions would have the qualifications to advance to the platinum quality. It seemed like it was still a long way off before the pig could be plump and strong. Jiang Xiao felt a little guilty. After all, he had implicated Xiao Xiao, second last pet. Second last thought that it was a form of training for Xiao Xiao. When Jiang Xiao expressed his gratitude and apology to second last, she said the same thing. It's too comfortable. Second last had always felt that Xiao Xiao's life was too comfortable, so she always found things for Xiao Xiao to do. However, Xiao Xiao was simply too powerful. The suppression of his rank made it difficult for other creatures to pose any threat to him. Besides, second last was a guardian of the night who had to lead apprentices in the Yi Mountain. The creatures there were, well, they were very weak. Even if she released Xiao Xiao every day and gave it missions, she wouldn't be able to train it well. If second last wasn't a guardian of the night, but a wasteland reclaimer, Xiao Xiao would be able to play its role. For second last, it would be a form of training for Xiao Xiao to maintain its vigilance and maintain the order of the world in the Scourge Ruins. However, Jiang Xiao said to second last, in a few years, when Xiao Xiao reaches the peak of the White Mountain Snowplume species, we can try to inject some water into her and see if she can advance to a higher level. Second last nodded silently and felt a sense of motivation. Second last had been on missions with Jiang Xiao for a long time, so she definitely knew how his countercurrent light worked. In order to give Xiao Xiao star power, second last had to have more star power than Xiao Xiao. At this moment, second last was in the Starfall stage, while Xiao Xiao was in the Platinum stage. They were both in the fourth stage of their respective races and seemed to be on par with each other. However, at this moment, second last star power could not compare to Xiao Xiao's. As a human, second last had a higher level of intelligence than Xiao Xiao, and she could also absorb more star techniques. As a creature of another dimension, Xiao Xiao had a stronger physique, endurance, speed, and so on than second last. All in all, putting aside the special star technique for the time being, Xiao Xiao was ahead of second last in terms of physical strength and fitness. We have to exclude star techniques here, because that's the second advantage of humans. If she were to add in star techniques, second last would be able to send Xiao Xiao flying with one hand. She had an absolute advantage in terms of strength and agility. Not to mention second last, Jiang Zhao's physical strength was far superior to Zhao's, even though he seemed weak and insignificant in front of the majestic Xiao Xiao. His platinum endurance alone was far superior to Xiao Zhao's. The platinum green glow was also an example. Jiang Xiao might not be able to defeat Xiao Xiao, but Jiang Xiao would definitely be able to send Xiao Xiao flying 20 meters away with a gentle tap. Hence, apart from star techniques, Xiao Xiao was not only superior in terms of physical attributes, but its total star power was also higher than second last's. The more terrifying thing was that Xiao Xiao had only been born for 8 months and was far from reaching the peak state of its race. The Star World and the regular world had the same rules. In the normal world, humans were almost crushed by some wild animals in terms of physical attributes. However, humans eventually became the most intelligent of all creatures and stood at the top of the food chain. At the end of the day, it was all about wisdom. Star techniques were also considered a kind of tool. Under the guidance of higher wisdom, the advantage of Star Warriors in using and combining star techniques was probably the reason why the world that was plagued with disasters had yet to be conquered. Jiang Xiao drove second last all the way back to Jiangbin City, but he did not go straight to Jianan Village. Instead, he entered Jiangbin City and headed to Ruifeng business firm. Jiang Xiao did not see Sun City in there. Due to the fact that it was still the Lunar New Year, Manager Sun did not come to work. However, Jiang Xiao spoke to Fatty Sun on the phone. In the end, the The staff at the counter collected the gold-quality Ape Ghoul King Star bead. That was Jiang Zhao's third gain. Although Han Jiangxue had repeatedly emphasized that second last was there to accompany Jiang Xiao to train and not to make money with him. Jiang Xiao understood that and did indeed do that. However, during the training, Jiang Xiao inevitably obtained a certain amount of benefits. For example, the 12 Ape Ghoul Star beads in his pocket and the Ape Ghoul King Star bead. If he was really there to make money, Jiang Xiao would have long gone to harvest the savage sorcerers that he encountered along the way. The savage sorcerers had special star techniques, such as Zombie Spirit and Corpse Explosion, and each star bead was worth up to 20,000 yuan. However, Jiang Xiao would always follow second last's rhythm and leave after taking the savage sorcerer star bead. He really did not deliberately go there to make money. The two of them had special identities and hence, they did not need to pay for admission. Second last was also a goddess in the galaxy stage, and the country did not allow star warriors above the nebula stage to appear in such a low-level dimensional space. If they were to really enter the arsenal to make money, it would indeed be a little shameless. Hence, Jiang Xiao decided to buy half of his face. The Ape Ghoul Star beads were sold at 3,500 yuan each, while the Ape Ghoul King Star beads were 280,000 yuan each. Under Fatty Sun's care, the staff did not try to lower the price and simply appraised the star beads before transferring the money to him. Jiang Xiao was already 16 years old, and he had already applied for his first bank card when he was about to go to school in the Star Warriors Academy in September last year. Hence, Jiang Xiao did not have to carry money back home. Little Jiangxue had also transferred 100,000 yuan to Jiang Zhao's bank card back then. He did not spend much during the Spring Festival, and it was only about 2,000 yuan. Now, he had earned another 322,000 yuan. Jiang Xiao did some calculations and realized that even after deducting the 150,000 yuan for each of them, the two of them still had a net profit of 22,000 yuan. Of course, if second last was a private tutor, 300,000 yuan might not be enough for her salary. With the huge sum of 420,000 yuan in his pocket, Jiang Xiao also had some ideas. Although he knew that the amount of money might not be enough to buy a high-quality star bead, Jiang Xiao felt that he could buy a car for second last. Jiang Xiao was filled with gratitude towards second last. Second last was a soldier who had been through a lot of dangerous situations all year round. Hence, she did not have much interest in ordinary things. Hence, Jiang Xiao had to give her something that she liked. Didn't you see how the small red ribbon made her so happy? Jiang Xiao thought about it and wondered how he should express his gratitude. What did she lack? After some thought, Jiang Xiao felt that second last lacked a ride. She lacked a spacious ride that could accommodate her long legs. Jiang Xiao felt that the two of them would have to drive a lot in the future. Hence, it was necessary to buy a spacious car for her to drive. At the very least, they could change hands and Jiang Xiao could rest in the front passenger seat. Jiang Xiao had been running all the way out of the arsenal and had been training intensely for 2 days. Hence, he was exhausted both physically and mentally. His physical fatigue could be healed with blessing, but his mental fatigue could not. He then looked at second last, who was lying comfortably in the front passenger seat with her eyes closed. The more Jiang Xiao looked at her, the angrier he got. Buy a car. I have to. I'll buy one after the second semester is over. It doesn't matter if it's a high-end or low-end car. 50,000 yuan or 200,000 yuan will do too. As long as the car is spacious enough, she could drive it. Jiang Xiao was very determined. On the way back to Jiangbin City from Dashi City, he even wanted to summon the decoy to drive the car while he slept in the trunk. Chapter 463. On the 5th day of the Lunar New Year. While the ordinary people were happily celebrating the Lunar New Year at home, visiting relatives, and playing mahjong, Jiang Xiao and second last had already embarked on their journey to the snowfield. The capital Star Warriors University would reopen on the 17th of February, and Jiang Xiao would spend about 2 weeks in the snowfield. 2 weeks was neither too long nor too short for others. However, it would be an extremely painful 2 weeks for Jiang Xiao. Jiang Shao recalled his previous experience of killing in the snowfield and holy ground more than once. Jiang Shao was also rather certain that he would be in the same state as before. He would continuously swing his sword and kill. When fresh lives were no longer treated as lives, when the actions of the battle became a mechanical massacre, and when his heart and eyes were filled with numbness, it would be difficult to judge if it was the right way to train. The Guardians of the Night outside the Holy Ground did not express much about Second Last and Jiang Zhao's arrival. They were rather familiar with the two of them. The Guardians of the Night were especially impressed by Jiang Shao. They still remembered that Jiang Shao was repeatedly brought back to the tent and rested for a while before charging out again with his sword. The Guardians of the Night would not question the training methods of the Light Chasers, and they also had their own judgment of the situation. Clearly, the White Ghouls and White Ghoul Witches could not cause much trouble to the Guardian of the Night apprentice, but they did not think that Jiang Shao was bullying them. Instead, they felt that it was a form of training for his temperament and willpower. The Guardians of the Night around the Holy Ground were also well aware that Jiang Shao would probably become a Light Chaser after he finished his apprenticeship. After all, the Guardians of the Night did not have such high and strict standards. Perhaps, after he finished his apprenticeship, he would receive a secret mission of a higher level. Jiang Shao did not care about what others speculated or thought. There was nothing wrong with his identity, and there was nothing wrong with him coming there to train. At this moment, he was holding a giant sword and slaughtering the white ghouls while stepping on the halo of nostalgia. The chaotic and noisy battlefield was also a form of training for his skills. As for why Jiang Shao was stepping on the halo of nostalgia, it was because 5 rays of countercurrent light suddenly shot out of Jiang Zhao's body. The 5 countercurrent lights were like 5 tails that were connected to the 5 nearest white ghouls. The white ghouls were all of the brass quality. Perhaps it would be difficult for Jiang Shao to upgrade a silver quality creature to the gold quality, but with the total amount of star power of Jiang Shao, it would be a piece of cake for him to upgrade a brass quality creature. The star power in Jiang Zhao's body decreased rapidly, but as he slashed with his sword, the star power rose again. He did not have to worry as his life was shared with the other 5 white ghouls. Platinum Nostalgia and Platinum Dawn had greatly improved Jiang Zhao's abilities. Second Last became the person in charge of controlling the situation. Under normal circumstances, she wouldn't intervene, but once she discovered that the white ghouls that had leveled up were trying to run out of the holy ground, she would immediately stop them. Due to the characteristics of the white ghouls, such situations rarely occurred. Usually, she would just stand behind Jiang Shao and watch him fight quietly in a corner of the holy ground that was protected by Jiang Shao. Her eyes were cold and sharp, and at the very beginning, her gaze made Jiang Shao feel like he was being stared at by a sword. However, as the battle progressed, Jiang Shao had already gotten used to her gaze. She was like a demon behind the scenes, watching as Jiang Shao became more and more taciturn. She watched as his body was smeared with sinful blood. She watched as he became more and more cruel and numb. She also watched as the warrior walked towards the abyss step by step. Jiang Shao guarded the corner of the holy ground and slaughtered 5 silver quality white ghouls while looking for the white ghoul witches that were rushing over. He discovered that the white ghoul witches were temporarily far away from him, so he immediately activated the Scourge Ruins. In an instant, a group of white ghouls surged into the Scourge Ruins, after which Jiang Shao immediately closed the door. In the Scourge Ruins, the 28 gold quality creatures also had a source of food. No, to be exact, there were 26 of them. Unbeknownst to Jiang Shao and Second Last, 2 savage witches had already died in the Scourge Ruins. After all, the physique of the savage witches was still slightly inferior to that of the lava ghoul witches. Hence, 2 savage witches met with mishaps in the 100 square meter space. In the past 3 days, Xiao Xiao had also experienced a huge setback in its life. At the end of the day, the Scourge Ruins was still too small. As the deity in charge of the place, Xiao Xiao also failed to take good care of it. Jiang Shao was fighting all the time outside the door, and Xiao Xiao wasn't much better. It could clear the entire Scourge ruins in an instant. However, it couldn't do that. It had accepted its master's orders and had no choice but to be patient and constantly adjust the balance between the three forces. The sudden influx of more than 10 white ghouls caused the three forces in the Scourge ruins to pause for a moment. Immediately afterwards, they reached a temporary truce and charged towards the brass-quality white ghouls while howling. Xiao Xiao had not eaten for a few days. He also raised his hoof and crushed the chest of a white ghoul. He then returned to his corner with the white ghoul in his mouth and ate quietly. Jiang Xiao and Second Last hadn't entered the Scourge ruins for 3 days. Hence, they didn't know what was going on inside for the time being. However, when Second Last entered again, Xiao Xiao would probably have a lot to explain to her. Well, that is, if it could speak. In the snowfield of the holy ground, Jiang Xiao played with the giant sword like a dagger. Every slash, every slight turn of the wrist, a slight sidestep, and a small step forward seemed to be a teaching action. Second Last was mesmerized by the soundless yet perfect scene. Yes, Jiang Xiao had misunderstood her. She might have the intention of supervising him, but she was more likely enjoying it. It was a feast for the eyes, especially for a pure soldier like her. Such skills were a capital for survival. Sometimes, she even thought that she should ask Jiang Xiao for advice on using the giant sword. Second Last had a high combat IQ and was extremely talented in sports. She also had a good understanding of cold weapons. However, to be honest, in terms of the two skills that she had learned so far, her attainments in archery were much higher than those in spears. Second Last knew her limitations. She knew that she had only relied on her explosive physical attributes and powerful star techniques to make up for her weakness in using spears. Perhaps spears were not suitable for her, and the giant sword might be a good choice. The giant sword was long, heavy, and heavy enough. Jiang Xiao had now reached another level. However, previously, the style of using a giant sword was bold and unparalleled. It was suitable for infantry and also suitable for generals. Second Last's eyes flickered slightly, and she crossed her arms in front of her chest while leaning against the wall of the hill in the holy ground. She then secretly made a decision. Jiang Xiao was not fighting alone. Apart from Second Last, there was another Jiang Xiao who was in the upper dimension of the snowfield at this moment. The white ghoul, which should be called it. In the mysterious upper dimension of the snowfield, a tall white ghoul which was walking in the silent snow forest. The white ghoul, which that was 184 centimeters tall, could be considered tall, but it was just like a primary school student here. Let's call it Jiang Xiao for now. The white ghoul, which that Jiang Xiao had transformed into, suddenly stopped in its tracks and yelled at the broken tree in the distance. Ah! Dozens of meters away, a huge white ghoul stared with scarlet eyes and disgusting saliva dripping from its mouth. One of its huge hands was holding a broken tree trunk and constantly kneading it, crushing the tree into pieces. Clearly, the white ghoul was struggling and hesitating. Jiang Xiaowu opened its mouth again and exclaimed with a menacing expression, "Ah, I Jiang Xiaowu, super fierce." The white ghoul shrank its neck slightly. When a 3-meter-tall beast that was as large as a hill made such a timid move, it would give off an extremely contradictory feeling. The white ghoul finally turned around and scurried away. Jiang Xiaowu couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief because it knew that it wouldn't be able to outrun a white ghoul of this level. When it first entered this place, Jiang Xiaowu had made a mistake by trying to avoid the white ghoul's line of sight and its path. However, things did not turn out as it wished. The more it tried to avoid the white ghoul, the bolder it became. In the end, it was torn apart mercilessly by the white ghouls and turned into specks of starlight that disappeared with the wind. Now, Jiang Xiao had found the trick to survival. Even if it was a brass-quality white ghoul, which it could still scare away gold-quality white ghouls as long as it had this body. However, it had to be careful not to encounter white ghoul witches from other upper dimensions. If a Li Ghoul were to encounter a Li Kuei, it would be torn apart. With the protection of this body, Jiang Xiaowu could barely carry out her investigation work. Unfortunately, Jiang Xiaowu had been trekking in the upper dimension and walking towards the west for a long time, but he still didn't find any traces of his ancestors. The environment here was better than the snowfield in the lower dimension. Heavy snow and strong winds were rare. Compared to the dark snowfield in the lower dimension, the snowfield here was at dusk. Jiang Xiaowu could see the slightly orange-red color on the horizon. It simply regarded that as the direction where the sun was setting in the west. Although there doesn't seem to be any alternation of day and night here. Just like that, Jiang Xiaowu followed the guidance of the orange-red color on the horizon. Step by step, he staggered through the snowy plains, leaving behind footprints of varying depths. Slowly, it walked out of the endless snow forest and stood on the cliff. Jiang Xiaowu held onto the tree with one paw. It raised its head slightly and looked at the beautiful burning clouds in the sky. This road to the west, it was unknown when it would end. Jiang Xiaowu sighed softly and carved the word night on the tree with its sharp claws. Jiang Xiaowu left behind these square words and continued on its way. It discovered that at the foot of the distant cliff, a group of creatures had emerged from the snow forest and were looking up at it. Jiang Xiaowu swallowed his saliva. Among the small group, Jiang Xiaowu saw a tall and skinny creature. It was a white ghoul witch. Chapter 464. I'm really sorry. Welcome to the U*Book Friends Group number 2. Group chat number 996861497. You're welcome to join us. 9-star poison milk, leaves slip currently typing. Please wait a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to receive the latest update. Chapter 465. Damn it. In the snowfield of the holy ground, Jiang Xiao, who was wielding his sword, suddenly spoke up with a sullen expression and sent a white ghoul flying away. His actions made Second Last secretly feel bewildered. Jiang Xiao actually did not guard the corner of the holy ground and instead dashed out with his sword. He cast 5 rays of countercurrent light again, and the 4 white ghouls and a white ghoul, which froze in place. The bodies of the 5 creatures of other dimensions were trembling violently, and they had clearly entered a state of advancement. On the other hand, Jiang Xiao plunged forward and waved his giant sword continuously while unleashing green glow. All of a sudden, the white ghouls that swarmed forward were all thrown away. Not only were they thrown away, but Jiang Xiao also attacked the vital parts of the white ghouls with his sword. Under the effect of green glow, the thick-skinned white ghouls died one after another. Second Last acutely sensed Jiang Xiao's abnormality and yelled, "Jiang Xiao." However, she saw that the young man was frantically harvesting the star beads without any intention of retreating. Without Jiang Xiao's protection, Second Last began to be harassed by the white ghouls and had no choice but to join the battle. The brass-quality creatures could not cause any trouble for her, but Jiang Xiao's actions made her a little worried. Roar! A white ghoul charged over and slashed at Second Last with its sharp claws. Second Last's body suddenly turned into fog, but the white ghoul tore it apart and the dense fog drifted away. She then appeared behind Jiang Xiao. Jiang Xiao. Second Last's hoarse voice sounded again, and the dense fog immediately turned into a human figure that patted Jiang Xiao's shoulder. Jiang Xiao subconsciously turned his body sideways and elbowed the person behind him. The movement was small but extremely fast, and it was accompanied by green glow. Second Last's eyes narrowed and her body turned into fog again to escape the fate of being elbowed away. The fog penetrated Jiang Xiao's body and took shape in front of him. It was also at this moment that a giant blade suddenly stopped on her forehead. With a sullen expression, Jiang Xiao gripped the hilt of his sword tightly and stared at the person in front of him. It was frightening and dangerous. Second Last stared into Jiang Xiao's eyes and said, "Let's talk." Jiang Xiao hesitated for a moment and waved his hand, after which the door of the Calamity Ruins opened immediately. He then retreated and entered. Second Last strode forward and followed behind. Right before the gate of the Shadow Ruins closed, another group of white ghouls rushed in. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws. Second last lifted the silver spear in her hand, and a gust of wind mixed with frost blew them away. In a distant corner, Xiao Xiao, who was lying down, quickly stood up. She let out a happy cry and ran over. However, she discovered that something was wrong. Its good friend did not seem to be in the mood to play with it today. Jiang Xiao loosened his grip, and the blade fell to the ground. He then fell to the ground. Second last looked around and swept her spear horizontally, after which the lava ghoul witches and savage witches nearby were blown to the other side. Phew! Jiang Xiao sighed deeply and held his forehead with one hand before wiping his face forcefully, as if trying to wake himself up. He's dead, Second last said hoarsely as she walked towards Jiang Xiao and looked down at him. Yes. Jiang Xiao grinned and sat cross-legged on the ground with his elbows on his knees and one hand on his face. He tilted his head and closed his eyes. Second last said calmly, 7 days. That's a long time. Yeah, 7 days. That's a long time. If you know what I've been through in the past 7 days, you'll find it even longer. Ever since Jiang Xiaowu encountered the group led by the White Ghoul Witches, he began to escape. Fortunately, when the White Ghoul Witches discovered Jiang Xiaowu, they were at the bottom of the cliff, which gave Jiang Xiaowu some time to escape. However, as natural hunters, the White Ghoul Witches and their White Ghouls had keen intuition and an extreme desire for prey. Jiang Xiaowu tried to avoid the enemy again and again, but he was discovered by them again and again. The absolute difference in physical fitness made Jiang Xiaowu feel extremely miserable. During the 7 days of dealing with the hunters, Jiang Xiaowu yearned for a star technique more than once. Even if it were just any one of them, he might not be in such a terrible situation. Yeah, at most, I'll just die. It's easier said than done, but if anyone were to experience it for themselves, they probably wouldn't feel that way. What made Jiang Xiaowu feel even more frustrated was the fact that the night that he had been carving along the way had all become useless. The next time he went to the upper dimension, he wouldn't know where he would be teleported to. The snowfield of the upper dimension was so vast that it made him feel hopeless. Second last looked down at Jiang Xiao calmly and said, "You've already done very well. You don't have to do this." Jiang Xiao crossed his legs, lowered his elbows, lowered his head, and hummed in assent. Second last frowned slightly. She could tell that Jiang Xiao was being perfunctory and even displeased. Second last asked, "What's the matter?" Jiang Xiao asked, "What's the point?" Second last raised her eyebrows and asked, "What is the point of me doing this?" Jiang Xiao lowered his head and said softly, "What's the point of me doing this?" Second last looked at Jiang Xiao quietly without responding. Jiang Xiao shook his head and said, "My plan is reckless. I don't have the ability to draw a map, and I don't even have the ability to protect myself. I'm constantly on the run. So what if I find them? I can't find my way home either. Am I supposed to greet them? Listen to their stories? Ask them if they still have any unfulfilled wishes? What other people do I need to take care of?" Second last suddenly squatted down and placed her hand on Jiang Zhao's cheek. She then lifted his face and said, "Perhaps seeing them is the point." She knew that he wasn't angry at her, but rather he was blaming himself and denying himself. Looking at Jiang Zhao's silence, Second last sighed softly and said, "The education system of the Star Warriors has made us become people who focus on results. But in this world, not everything will have a happy ending. Have you ever thought that the process of finding them is the process of realizing the value of your life?" Jiang Xiao fiddled with his head and broke free from her palm before lowering his head again. "Including the last time, I've died a total of 29 times. Apart from seeing a wooden hut again, I only saw snow the other 28 times. There was only snow." Looking at Jiang Zhao's desolate expression, Second last was surprised to find that she was feeling a little sorry for him. In the past 26 years of her life, she had rarely felt such emotions. The last time she felt that way, she was still an innocent child who had yet to start her cold career. Second last said softly, "Let's go back. The uniqueness of the upper dimension determines that you have to fight alone. We'll come back here when you're strong enough." Jiang Shao shook his head and said, "There are still a few days left. You can rest here. I'll go out and get some star beads. I feel that green glow and endurance are improving." Upon hearing this, Second Last gently rubbed Jiang Zhao's head. Jiang Zhao's response gave her a lot of information, not only about the improvement in strength, but also about the fact that he wasn't dissatisfied with the special training and didn't lose himself in the endless killing. He was just a little frustrated with the mission of the upper dimension. He was only defeated, but not defeated. Second Last stood up and looked around, only to find that there was something wrong with the numbers. She said, "Let's go as usual. I'll accompany you." Lulu. Xiao Xiao finally found the opportunity to lean forward and look at Jiang Shao, who was sitting on the ground. It couldn't help but lean its head down and rub Jiang Zhao's cheek. While stroking its head, Jiang Shao turned on the internal star map, where the data was clear. Green glow, platinum quality level 8, 60/1000. Endurance, platinum quality level 8, 60/1000. According to the silver quality white ghoul star beads that had been upgraded, he still had to slaughter nearly 200 white ghouls. 200? 2 days would be enough. If he didn't need a rest, he could complete it in a day. Second Last said again, "We've lost 3 savage witches." After saying that, Xiao Xiao buried her head in Jiang Zhao's arms. She was clearly a horse, but she pretended to be an ostrich. If the first death of 2 savage witches was because Xiao Xiao was not used to controlling the battlefield, then the death of another savage witch in the next few days would be considered a dereliction of duty. Jiang Shao was also awakened by Xiao Xiao's movements and exited the internal star map. He could feel Xiao Xiao's large head rubbing left and right in his arms while acting coquettishly. Jiang Shao looked up, but the first thing he saw was Second Last's menacing gaze instead of the chaotic battlefield. Jiang Shao held Xiao Xiao's head in his arms and said, "This place is so small, and there are so many monsters. Casualties are inevitable." Just as Second Last was about to say something, Jiang Shao suddenly changed the topic. "Maybe we should bring a hot air balloon in." Second Last said, "A hot air balloon. Okay." Jiang Shao stroked Xiao Xiao's mane and said, "White ghouls and white ghoul witches can't fly." Second Last's attention was really diverted. She said softly, "You want to reduce the difficulty of your training." Jiang Shao was immediately stunned. All of a sudden, he discovered that he was fundamentally different from Second Last. Jiang Shao went in with the intention of looking for someone. However, Second Last's motive was not that pure. Apart from looking for someone, she also wanted Jiang Shao to undergo training. To endure all the pain and suffering? Jiang Shao asked, "Wan Hongying, do you want me to die?" Second Last pursed her lips and rarely acted that way. Her facial expression had always been stiff. However, she said, "You have an advantage that ordinary people don't have. Death will make you a powerful warrior." Jiang Shao raised his voice and said, "You've never died before, so you don't know how effective it is." Second Last said, "No, I've died before and you're the one who saved me. It's in this snowfield under this starry sky." Jiang Shao frowned and asked, "So you think that death is a rare kind of training?" Second Last said, "It will make you work harder to live. Just like you said, you'll live with all your might." Hee. Jiang Shao humphed and said, "That's you. It's just once. You and I can't be compared. What if I get used to it?" Second Last shook her head and said with a firm gaze, "Judging from your behavior, I don't think so. You'll never get used to it. On the contrary, you'll find that the price you pay every time is higher than the last." Jiang Shao opened his mouth, but didn't know how to respond. Second Last said, "One day, you'll move from the battlefield to the battlefield, and you're destined to encounter difficulties, dangers, and hopeless situations." Second Last looked at Jiang Shao quietly and said, "You'll cherish everything you have." Jiang Shao asked, "Do you think that dying on the battlefield is our destiny?" Second Last pondered for a while and said softly, "It's a kind of honor." Jiang Shao asked, "Since it's not destiny, why are you so pessimistic?" Second Last's face stiffened and she was expressionless again. She didn't respond. She simply looked at Jiang Shao quietly and put her hand behind her head while fiddling with the dark red headband. Staring at the child who had given her warmth time and time again, she thought to herself, because if that day really comes, I hope I'll be honored and you'll return home. Chapter 466. 2 days later, in the Holy Ground. The roars were endless, and the white ghouls and white ghoul witches were surging towards the two people in the corner like a tidal wave. Although the toxic healer was like a small boat in the stormy seas, he was sailing steadily and would never. The boat. Green glow upgraded. Diamond quality level 0. Endurance upgraded. Diamond quality level 0. A message suddenly appeared in the internal star map. Jiang Xiao had just absorbed a silver quality white ghoul star bead, and his body stiffened. It was not because of the diamond green glow, but because of diamond endurance. Jiang Xiao felt that his physical strength had increased by leaps and bounds. It was definitely not the silent type, but rather, he could clearly feel it. He then lit up the Big Dipper star map. Second last, who was behind him, narrowed her eyes, and a look of anticipation appeared on her expressionless face. A few seconds later, second last cold eyes glistened because she saw with her own eyes that the second platinum star slot on the Big Dipper star map had suddenly lit up after a dazzling ray of light. A dazzling diamond quality star slot was born. Second last bit her lip and thought to herself, she has never seen a diamond-colored star slot in her entire career. It turned out that the color of the star slot was crystal clear, and it looked brilliant and colorful under the contrast of the nebulae. It was just like the life that the young man in front of her was about to have. It was dazzling and resplendent. Jiang Zhao's body was being torn apart by the white ghouls that were swarming towards him. However, they could only tear his clothes and could not break through his physical defense at all. His body was still made of flesh, but no matter how sharp the white ghouls' claws were, they could only leave faint scratches on his body. All of a sudden, Jiang Xiao moved. He suddenly struggled slightly, but the white ghouls that were biting him were sent flying backwards like heavy cannonballs. They actually managed to push away the waves of white ghouls in a short period of time. The scene was extremely spectacular. The damage that the white ghouls suffered was much greater than expected. An empty space appeared around Jiang Xiao for a short while. Finally, he had a range of movement. The giant sword was covered in a green glow as he slashed downwards. A white ghoul flew out with a whoosh. Although it did not open up a path in the wave of monsters, it still knocked down several white ghouls and blocked the advance of the army behind. Under the powerful repelling effect of the green light, there was a hidden, powerful, striking effect. The moment the thick-skinned white ghoul was sent flying, the wound that the tip of the sword passed through was terrifyingly deep. That was the effect caused by the tip of the sword after green glow sent it flying. If green glow did not have the effect of sending it flying, Jiang Zhao's sword might have really split the white ghoul into two. Jiang Xiao took a deep breath, and the halo of nostalgia appeared beneath his feet. He waved his giant sword, and star power was quickly replenished. However, the next few slashes were not as domineering as the diamond-quality green glow. Instead, they were more like the gold-quality green glow. He can actually adjust the intensity of green glow too. It seemed that when the quality of any star technique was upgraded to a high enough level, the direction of evolution would be controllable effects. Jiang Xiao directly activated the Scourge Ruins and the white ghouls in front of him, who were fearless of death and never felt tired. That was the last time he could replenish before he left the snowfield. From now on, the creatures in the Scourge Ruins would be hungry for a while. Jiang Xiao leaned against the gate of the Scourge Ruins and looked at Second Last. "Let's go." Second Last kicked the white ghoul that was coming towards her and darted over like a cheetah. She grabbed Jiang Zhao's collar with one hand and stepped on the white ghoul's head and shoulders. She then carried Jiang Xiao and ran out of the crowd of white ghouls. A few minutes later, she dragged Jiang Xiao into the Guardians of the Night tent. The few Guardians of the Night were already used to it. They got up and got ready to leave to give the master and disciple some space. "We'll leave now. Thank you," Jiang Shao said frantically after being thrown onto the ground by second last. The few guardians of the night stopped in their tracks and looked over. Jiang Shao was extremely humble and polite. He cupped his fists at them and said, "Thank you for taking care of me for the past few weeks." The guardians of the night looked at each other, and no one spoke. With Officer Zhu Guang around, they had no choice but to take care of him. Jiang Shao held onto his sword and looked at second last. "Let's go back." "Okay." Second last nodded. Under the night sky, two figures, one large and one small, hurried away from the area where the guardians of the night were on duty. On the way back, the two of them remained silent until they encountered a white ghoul that was alone. "Open your eyes," Jiang Shao said all of a sudden before dashing towards the white ghoul with his giant sword. The white ghoul's eyes were bloodshot, and it looked just like a bloodthirsty beast in the dark night. It howled and dashed towards Jiang Shao. At the next moment, the bloodthirsty beast turned into a whimpering kitten. The wound on its chest was so deep that its bones could be seen. It spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backward. Second last's hoarse voice sounded from behind Jiang Shao. 48 to 52 meters. Jiang Shao looked at the dark figure from afar and nodded excitedly. It was the first time in so many days that his eyes glistened with a peculiar glint of light. In the endless experience, he had always drawn and sheathed his sword mechanically. His eyes had long lost their spirituality and were just like a pool of stagnant water. Now second last saw that Jiang Shao had come back to life again. "Let's go, it's time." Jiang Shao put the giant sword behind his back and turned to look at second last. Second last nodded subtly and thought to herself, "It's time." The two of them didn't need to adapt to the chilly Beijiang after returning from the snowfield to the windy Beijiang. It happened to be nighttime when they arrived, and Jianan village wasn't as brightly lit as the city. The stars could still be seen in the sky. The two of them quickly showered and changed before embarking on their way home. It was worth mentioning that it seemed to be a little difficult to start the engine for her car that was parked in the parking lot. In the past 2 weeks, it had clearly snowed, and there were people there to clean it up. However, no one had specially heated up the car for her. With the help of the soldiers, Jiang Shao finally managed to start the engine after a long while. He then turned to look at second last in the passenger seat, wanting to say something, but she had already fallen asleep. Yes, she was sleeping soundly in the cold car that was as cold as an ice house in the snowfield. Her long hair was already slightly damp, and there was a faint fragrance of shower gel on her body. Jiang Shao shook his head helplessly and only dared to step on the accelerator after the car heated up for a full 20 minutes. Fortunately, it could be driven. Unfortunately, he was still the one driving. Jianan village was very close to Jiangbin city, so the journey wasn't too arduous. However, Jiang Shao didn't drive straight home. Instead, he went to the bathhouse that they had once visited and the barbecue shop in the alley opposite. Familiar and heartwarming scenes could always heal one's heart. Jiang Shao once again saw Auntie Yu, who was dozing off behind the counter, as well as the passionate Uncle Yu. There were 2 grilled codfish, 20 lamb skewers, a few chicken wings, chicken hearts, chicken gizzards, grilled sausages, pancakes, and a caddy of braised pork. Under Auntie Yu's constant rejection, Jiang Shao eventually tossed the money down and scurried out of the brightly lit shop. He then ran through the dark alley and returned to the car. Interestingly, the sound of Jiang Shao opening and closing the car door did not wake second last up at all. Soon after he started the car, second last, who was sound asleep in the passenger seat, suddenly twitched her nose and slowly opened her eyes. Jiang Shao was speechless. She stretched her stiff body and sat up before reaching for the plastic bag in front of the car. Jiang Shao said, "Can you bear with it for a while? Let's go home and eat." Second last hand that was holding onto the plastic bag paused slightly. She then picked it up and put it in her arms as if she hadn't heard Jiang Zhao's words. Jiang Shao wished he could kick the gluttonous cat out. Jiang Shao saw from the corner of his eye that she had taken out a grilled chicken wing. Smelling the alluring aroma, he couldn't help but say, "Drink some wine first to warm your stomach before eating." Second last turned to look at Jiang Shao, feeling that there was something wrong with his words. She then stared at Jiang Xiao silently and finished the 2 chicken wings one bite at a time. Great. Next, it's a race to see who's faster. Jiang Xiao stepped on the accelerator forcefully and then hurriedly released it. School was about to start. If he were to stay in jail for a few more days, he would be in deep trouble. When Jiang Xiao drove back to Huayuan Estate, Second Last had already finished all the food. At this moment, she was stretching her arms and looking for tissues in the glove compartment. Jiang Xiao was on the verge of tears. He hated Second Last and traffic jams even more. Well, he probably hated Second Last more. This woman is too cruel. She just sat beside me and finished all the barbecued food. Even if she fed me a mutton skewer, it would still be acceptable. Jiang Xiao asked, "Can you be human?" Second Last wiped her mouth and had just thrown the tissues into the plastic bag when she heard Jiang Xiao's words. She lowered her head and looked into the plastic bag, only to find some chicken wing bones and codfish bones. She then handed the plastic bag to him. Jiang Xiao was speechless. Jiang Xiao slowly stopped the car and got out with the plastic bag. He then threw it into the dustbin and walked towards his apartment. Second Last was swaying behind him while holding a mineral water bottle in her hand. She would raise her head and take a sip from time to time. Jiang Xiao opened the door and leaned against the door while waiting for her to walk past him. He thought to himself, "Indeed, I can't escape the fate of ordering takeout. I'm such a fool. Why didn't I buy more when I knew that she could eat so much?" In the elevator, Jiang Xiao finally heard her voice again. "I'm still hungry." Jiang Xiao looked up at Second Last and said angrily, "Same to you." Ding dong. When the elevator reached the 7th floor, Second Last strode out and opened the door with her key. "Order more codfish." Jiang Xiao followed her into the apartment and stood in the living room with his hands on his hips, helplessly. He watched as the figure collapsed onto the sofa. In the end, he quietly walked back to his room, charged his phone, and turned it on. He muttered, "The king of takeouts." Jiang Xiao ordered a lot of food and planned to feed Second Last. If she couldn't finish it, he would send it to Xiao Xiao. Anyway, it wouldn't be a waste. An hour later, the deliverman knocked on Jiang Xiao's door with the standard 4 plastic bags for a 20-person meal. At this moment, Second Last, who had been lying on the sofa, woke up again. After that, it was a long, silent mealtime. It was a competition of whose hands were faster. After eating for a while, Jiang Xiao said, "Thank you." "Okay." Second Last nodded calmly, without slowing down at all. She then grabbed the tail of the fish and took the last codfish away. Jiang Xiao's chopsticks fell into thin air. "Damn it, my sneak attack failed." Second Last tilted her head and looked over while eating the fish. Jiang Xiao then picked up a piece of toast. Since he had already started the conversation, he said, "This winter vacation has been a qualitative leap for me. It's all thanks to you." Second Last continued to eat the fish quietly, seemingly uninterested in Jiang Xiao's words. "I'm covered in platinum and even have 2 types of diamonds. If it weren't for you, I don't know when I'd be able to reach such heights," Jiang Xiao said with a solemn and sincere expression. "Thank you." Second Last stopped chewing the fish and looked at the barbecue below after a few seconds. "You talk too much." Jiang Xiao was dumbfounded. "You don't know what's good for you? Or are you tsundere?" Seemingly sensing that Jiang Xiao was a little indignant, she said, "Come back with a good ranking." Jiang Xiao tore a piece of toast angrily, only to find that the honey on it was very sweet. Under the influence of the food, it was difficult for him to roar again. He just grunted, and before he finished the half slice of bread, he pressed down on the other piece of bread with one hand. Second Last took out a piece of tissue and wiped the corner of her mouth that was stained with some sauce. "At least you didn't let down the 29 times you died and the 29 heroic souls that passed away." Jiang Xiao was stunned. He had explained to Second Last the reason for participating in the competition, and he had also said that it wasn't considered capable to be a bully and that he wanted a real story to tell. However, he had never mentioned anything about the 29 soldiers. It was undeniable that they were the main reason why he wanted to participate in the competition. Jiang Xiao asked, "Why did you?" Second Last simply moved Jiang Xiao's palm away and picked up the piece of bread that he was protecting. She then put it into her mouth and tasted the honey. You're not a complicated person. On the contrary, you're very innocent. I've investigated the situation, and it's not difficult for me to guess what you're thinking. In that case, wait for my good news, Jiang Xiao said casually. He snatched the half of the cod on second last plate when she wasn't paying attention and took a bite. Second last bit the toast and said, "That's the last half of the cod." Jiang Xiao gestured at the piece of toast in her mouth and said, "That's the last piece of toast." The two of them stared at each other, and the atmosphere suddenly froze. Chinese people, they were particular about reciprocity. They were the kings of toxic healers. They were the ones who were on the verge of courting death. Did you really think that my diamond level of endurance was prepared for the World Cup? Hee hee, how naive. Chapter 467. At noon the next day, Jiang Xiao carried a school bag and dragged his suitcase out of the house. Due to the fact that the Scourge Ruins was too chaotic, it could not be used as a storage room. Hence, Jiang Xiao had no choice but to return to school with his luggage. There was a taxi downstairs, but he did not ask Second Last to send him back. Jiang Xiao left a decoy at home, so it was not considered a farewell. The flight from Jiangbin City to the capital took less than 2 hours, which was convenient and fast. Interestingly, after Jiang Xiao arrived in the capital, he would probably take more than 2 hours to take a taxi from the Capital International Airport to the Capital Star Warrior Alliance. While Jiang Xiao set off for school, Jiang Xiao, who was cleaning the house, was called over by Second Last. Ever since she moved into Unit 701, Jiang Xiao's room had become her private room. Jiang Xiao had also consciously avoided stepping into his room for a long time to avoid the awkwardness. Jiang Xiao followed Second Last's voice and knocked on the door of his room. "Come in." Second Last's hoarse voice sounded from behind the door, sounding rather languid and unique to those who had just woken up. Jiang Xiao opened the door, only to find that she was still wrapped in a blanket and curled up on the small bed. Jiang Xiao finally knew why she didn't drive him to the airport. "It's already noon. You're still sleeping." "Here," Second Last said as she tossed her mobile phone to Jiang Xiao. Jiang Xiao caught in a fluster, feeling a little confused. He picked up the mobile phone, only to find that it was a text message, and the sender was simply marked as 1. Jiang Xiao looked at the content curiously, feeling a little excited. He had once asked Second Last about the star beads that could be used for both purification and output, and the text message gave him 3 types of star beads. One of them was the only type of star bead that could produce and purify star beads that could be found on the internet. Another type of star bead was provided to Jiang Xiao by Enni in the Night Disaster Mountain. As for the remaining type, Jiang Xiao had never heard of it. Second Last turned around and lay on her side on the bed, watching Jiang Xiao carefully reading the text message on his mobile phone. There are countless output star techniques. Although there aren't many purification star techniques, there are still some. The combination of 2 star techniques is rare. Apart from the one that could be found on the internet, the Guardians of the Night could only provide him with 2 options. In fact, the one that could be found on the internet was not a pure purification, but a reduction of the duration of the negative state. The star bead came from a dimensional space called Night City in Zhongyuan Province and Yinzhou Province. Auspicious Bee Star Bead. 1. Lucky. Increases the duration of positive buffs. Note: Passive star technique, silver quality. 2. Wish. Reduces the duration of the debuffs on the target. Note: silver quality. 3. Lucky Star Brocade. Stick the Lucky Star Brocade on the target. Every time the target is attacked by a star technique of any form, it will store a small amount of star power in the enemy's star technique. When the stored star power reaches a certain level, it will passively release pure star power shockwaves to the surrounding targets. Note: silver quality. As the only star bead that Jiang Xiao could find, he had certainly studied it for a long time. In fact, Jiang Xiao had also thought about the issue of upgrading the quality. Since the Rui star skill could reduce the duration of the negative statuses of the target, and it was of silver quality, what if Jiang Xiao upgraded it to gold quality? Where's platinum? Could this Rui really reach the level of purification? Or would it still reduce the duration of the negative statuses and still not achieve the effect of getting rid of the negative statuses instantly? Of course, Jiang Shao could only experiment and analyze it himself because none of the star warriors in the world could upgrade the quality of their star beads on their own like he could. The key was that the so-called output star technique in the star bead was passive. Jiang Shao was very dissatisfied with that. Jiang Shao really worked hard, but that was the only star bead he could find on the internet. There were many output star techniques, and although there were few purification star techniques, there were very few that combined the two. The other star bead provided by the Guardians of the Night was an eye-opener for Jiang Shao. It came from Xihai Province, which was located in the northwest of China. In the western part of Xihai Province, at the junction of the glacier and the Gobi Desert, there was a unique dimensional space, the Limestone Cave. Among them, there was a creature called the Rock Pillar Spirit. Rock Pillar Spirit Star Bead. 1. Giant Spirit Strike. Attack will be accompanied by a massive star power attack. Example. When punching forward, it will be accompanied by a massive star power fist. Note, gold quality. 2. Stone Spirit Brain Stone. Get rid of negative states by petrifying the entire body. During the petrification period, the body's defense will be enhanced to a certain extent. Note, gold quality. Jiang Zhao's eyes lit up, and he said, "This Stone Spirit Brain Stone is not bad. It can increase one's defense while purifying." Did you guys give it a name? Second last sat up and leaned against the head of the bed. She could finally stretch out her long legs. Ancestor Wasteland Reclaimer. Oh. Jiang Shao stared at his mobile phone and wondered about the effects of the Spirit Stone Brain after it was upgraded. However, he saw Second Last stroking her slightly messy hair, which he found to be rather charming. Jiang Shao couldn't help but say, "I'll buy you a bed. Why don't you sleep on the floor in the training room? It'll be so aggrieving." Second Last shook her head and said, "I'm leaving soon." Jiang Shao understood her response and realized that she wasn't solving the problem, but avoiding it. It seemed that she didn't want to sleep anywhere else. Jiang Shao said, "You'll be staying here frequently in the future. You'd better buy a bed. Go out and watch TV later. I'll tidy up the room." Jiang Shao was about to move the wardrobe at the end of the bed to the computer desk and buy a large bed for her. Second Last lifted the blanket and got up, rubbed her long hair, and strode out. She then said, "Whatever." Uffed. Jiang Shao pursed his lips and muttered, "Sundara, king of takeaways." Second Last, who had just walked to the bathroom door, stopped in her tracks and was dumbfounded. Jiang Shao sat on his bed and was on the verge of tears. He had been home for so long, and he could finally sit on his own bed. He decided to move it to the training room in a while. "I'm sorry. My bed hasn't fallen apart even after supporting her for so long." Jiang Shao fiddled with his mobile phone, and his thoughts soon returned to the star beads and star techniques. The Stone Spirit Brain Stone was rather attractive to Jiang Shao, but its only drawback was that it could only purify one's body. To a player like Jiang Shao, that was extremely fatal. If his star slot was full, but he didn't have the star techniques to purify his teammates, it would be detrimental to his future development. That was Jiang Zhao's last star slot, and he couldn't count on his star pet to have a star technique of purification. He hoped that his star pet would be a powerful output king. In terms of defense, the diamond level of endurance was already strong enough. Jiang Shao didn't really need the effect of petrification to increase his defensive power. After the Stone Spirit Brain Stone is upgraded, will it evolve in the direction of purifying the negative effects of its companions? Jiang Shao looked around and felt that its evolution didn't seem to be in the direction of group purification. In that case, the Tear Spirit Star Bead from Baman Province and Egret City that junior sister Ina and I provided is the best choice. While the decoy Jiang Shao was studying the star beads, the actual Jiang Shao had just landed and dragged his suitcase out of the terminal of the Capital International Airport. Winter was a good season. Jiang Shao wore a white cotton hat and scarf to cover himself up and avoid a lot of trouble. After queuing up, he finally got into a taxi. Jiang Shao indicated his destination and took out his mobile phone to inform the driver that he was safe. After that, Jiang Xiao opened the treasure hunting app and looked through the large bed. After browsing through it casually, he decided not to be too stingy and ended up spending 7,998 yuan to buy an extra-large bed for two. It was shipped locally and delivered to his door at night. Second last spent the entire winter vacation taking him to the skies. She definitely deserved a better bed. Moreover, putting aside their strength, she had brought him along to earn more than 300,000 during their trip to the armory. Now that I think about it, spending 8,000 yuan to buy a bed for her seems to be treating her badly. Okay, I'll wait for it to be delivered to my door. However, I have to rearrange the furniture in my room. That bed is really huge. Let's do this. Jiang Xiao stroked his chin and placed a large bed in the innermost part of the room. The side of the bed was next to the window. He then moved the study table, computer table, bookcase, and wardrobe out. No, it feels a little empty. I'll move the computer table and computer away, but you can have the study table and the book. It's decided. Jiang Xiao did as he said. He easily dragged the single bed toward the training room by himself. When second last was done washing up, she happened to see Jiang Xiao moving the computer into the training room. She raised her eyebrows slightly and walked into the room, knowing that he was going to move the computer table away. She casually picked up the small photo frame on the computer table, which was a photo of the buzzcut boy holding the FMVP trophy. She took the photo frame and placed it on the top shelf of the bookshelf. In the bookshelf were the various trophies and medals that Jiang Xiao had won in various competitions, as well as the photos of him winning the championship. It was a record of his journey. Jiang Xiao, who had returned to move the table, saw this scene but didn't say anything. He knew that he couldn't move the bookcase away. The wardrobe didn't have to be moved away either. Jiang Xiao had grown very quickly in the past year, and his clothes from last year were basically too small. Hence, he donated whatever he should throw away. Hence, there's a lot of space for second last to store her clothes. At the same time, in Star Warriors University, Jiang Xiao pushed open the dormitory door and said, "Boss Jiang, you're back. Did you think cough cough?" Before Jiang Xiao could finish his sentence, he coughed and couldn't help but fan his nose with his hand. In the dormitory, Qin Wanchuan was seated at his desk, while Gu Shi was seated at the desk opposite him. The two of them each had a cigarette in their mouths and were hugging each other with their backs facing each other. No. They were smoking with their backs facing each other. Jiang Xiao strode in quickly and hurriedly went to open the windows in the dormitory. "How much have you two smoked? Those two brothers still have to come back to stay. This room is so stinging." Gu Shi finally turned around and leaned his elbow against the back of the chair. He then looked up and blew a puff of smoke into the sky. "My brothers went on a mission outside the school yesterday." Jiang Xiao had a strange expression on his face. "What do you mean by your brothers? Are you starting to play the isolationist game now?" Gu Shi grinned and looked like a gangster. In fact, he even looked a little handsome. The earrings on his ears were glistening. "Did you know that the school reopened yesterday?" Jiang Xiao smiled awkwardly. He glanced at the silent Qin Wanchuan and said, "I went out for training and was delayed for a day." Hee. It's a misunderstanding." Gu Shi nodded seriously. "That's a good reason." He said, "Your training yesterday was all on me." Jiang Zhao's expression froze. This is bad. The intensity of Qin Wanchuan's training sessions was not a joke. Almost every time, he would reach Gu Shi's limit. On top of that, Jiang Zhao's training was also on Gu Shi. F***ck, both of you. Ruthless people. Qin Wanchuan, you're really ruthless. Gu Shi, you're really awesome. You were so tired yesterday, yet you're still able to get up to smoke and chat today? Jiang Xiao asked weakly. "Aren't you training today? Resting? Did you have too much training yesterday? Let me give you a blessing." Gu Shi grinned. "Resting? What a joke. How can he let me rest? Can't you see what I'm doing?" As he spoke, Gu Shi waved his hand and shook the cigarette between his two fingers. Jiang Xiao was dumbfounded. Qin Wanchuan is still here. How dare you say that? It's only been a Lunar New Year, and you're already so unyielding? Could it be that the people of Guishi have given you strength? Why don't I feel any strength from the people of Beijiang? Ah, the people of Beijiang did give me some more dumpling fillings and a few dumpling wrappers. Jiang Shao looked at Gu Shiren curiously and answered, "You're smoking." Gu Shiren nodded and picked up the cigarette box on the table. He shook it gently and saw that there were 3 fake snakes inside. He said, "I woke up late and delayed my training. When he came to the dormitory to catch me, he happened to see me smoking." Gu Shiren shrugged and said, "I didn't smoke on purpose to delay the training. I just got up and lit one." Jiang Shao nodded, knowing his habit. Gu Shiren flipped the box in annoyance and leaned his neck against the back of the chair. He looked at the ceiling and said, "Teacher Qin asked me to smoke an entire box. I'm not allowed to leave until I finish smoking." Jiang Shao turned to look at Qin Wangchuan, who was lowering his head and smoking silently. Jiang Shao thought about it and said apologetically, "Teacher Qin, don't be angry. I just came out of the dimension last night. I rushed to the capital today. Please calm down." However, Gu Shiren said he watched me smoke half a box and couldn't take it anymore. Gu Shiren raised his head and puffed out a mouthful of smoke. He's just addicted to smoking. Jiang Shao was speechless. Qin Wangchuan finally raised his head and looked at Jiang Shao. "He's resting today. Come with me later. You'll be responsible for his training today." Jiang Shao was dumbfounded. Upon hearing this, Jiang Shao walked to Gu Shiren's table, shook the cigarette box, and took out a fake snake. He then squatted in a standard Asian posture and joined in the smoking. Chapter 468. You only noted down 5 minor characters that had already been put on the agenda. The following 5 contestants are invited to report in the Q group and privately message me to rewrite their star maps, star techniques, and other detailed information. Try to be consistent with the information left in the minor characters building. If not, the brackets cannot be changed. 1. Homingming, melee combat, archery specialization. Unchangeable. 2. Saitu Nobuyuki. Try not to make any changes. 3. Zhao Wenlong. Melee combat, fists and feet cannot be changed. 4. Ember. Melee combat, dual swords. Unchangeable. 5. Jiang Hongxue. I hope you can change your name. After all, it overlaps with the protagonist. The above 5 contestants are invited to report in the Q group and privately message me about the minor characters. Some of you have already privately messaged me, but I have a habit of cleaning up my messages. Please send them again. Other friends who want to be minor characters can leave a message in the minor characters building. It seems that there will not be a large-scale cleaning of messages now. Note, you must have full fan value for the book. Otherwise, you will not be considered. If you really want to be a minor character, please attach a screenshot of all your subscriptions in the Q group. Otherwise, you will not be considered. However, the number of minor characters appearing in the Q group has been limited recently. We can only try our best to satisfy the readers. If you do not accept them, please forgive us. Note, private message. The messages in the group were being sent too quickly to be seen. Attached Q group, Group 1, 184119551 full. Chapter 469. You only noted down 5 minor characters that had already been put on the agenda. The following 5 contestants are invited to report in the Q group and privately message me to rewrite their star maps, star techniques, and other detailed information. Try to be consistent with the information I left in the minor characters building. If not, the brackets cannot be changed. 1. Homingming, melee combat, archery specialization, unchangeable. 2. Saitu Nobuyuki. Try not to make any changes. 3. Zhao Wenlong. Melee combat, unchangeable. 4. Ember. Melee combat, cross dual swords, unchangeable. 5. Jiang Hongxue. I hope you can change your name. After all, it overlaps with the protagonist. The above 5 contestants are invited to report in the Q group and privately message me about the minor characters. Some of you have already privately messaged me, but I have the habit of cleaning up my messages. Please send them again. Other friends who want to be minor characters can leave a message in the minor characters building. It seems that there will not be a large-scale cleaning of messages now. Note, You must have full fan value for the book. Otherwise, you will not be considered. If you really want to be a minor character, please attach a screenshot of all your subscriptions in the Q group. Otherwise, you will not be considered. However, the number of minor characters appearing in the Q group has been limited recently. We can only try our best to satisfy the readers. If you do not accept them, please forgive us. Note: private message. The messages in the group were being sent too quickly to be seen. Attached Q group, Group 1, 184119551 full. Chapter 470. Have you ever seen the Capital Star Warrior at 4 in the morning? No, you haven't seen it because you couldn't get in. No, it's because you're not a Star Warrior. Jiang Xiao had seen it before, and he had seen it while lying down. Yes, at this moment, Jiang Xiao was crawling with difficulty on the rubber track of the stadium. Stand up, Jiang Xiaopi. Don't pretend to be a caterpillar. Demon Sheen's roar filled the entire stadium. As he spoke, a football smashed onto Jiang Zhao's buttocks. Both Jiang Zhao's buttocks and the football were very elastic. Hence, when the football hit his buttocks, it flew high into the air. Qin Wangchuan, who had rushed over, stopped the football at his feet. Qin Wangchuan shouted, "Is this the limit? Bless myself, then start running." In the end, Jiang Xiao still used blessing. A pillar of light descended and restored his strength. At the same time, Jiang Zhao's heart was bleeding. He knew that he wouldn't be able to sleep today. Yes, he hadn't just woken up for his morning exercise. He hadn't slept all night and had been running. With the help of blessing, Jiang Xiao finally got up and continued to run forward. Bang! The football accurately hit his but again, bounced back and was controlled by Qin Wangchuan again. With this kind of footwork, you think you're a F*King star martial artist? You don't want to become a professional and make a name for yourself, but stay here as a little instructor? Your classmates have already gone to participate in the school's opening training. They were risking their lives in the dimensional space, but you were running laps here. Why? Qin Wangchuan kicked Jiang Zhao's, but with the ball while casting the roar of the dragon behind him. Qin Wangchuan said, "Because you chose the Wasteland Reclaimers. Because you are a Wasteland Reclamation Apprentice." Jiang Zhao's body suddenly tilted, and he dodged. And move. The football brushed past his body and flew out. Qin Wangchuan was stunned for a moment. Then he shouted angrily, "Your comrades are all at the galaxy stage. They are training in more difficult dimensional spaces, but what about you? You can only run laps here, because you are a rookie at the nebulous stage." "He's a rookie." Qin Wangchuan reprimanded Jiang Xiao while running to pick up the ball. The scene was extremely comical. Before Jiang Xiao could even run half a lap, Devil Qin had already caught up with him with the ball. He continued to roar loudly. "Why did you work so hard to get into the Capital Star Warrior Academy? Aren't you here for higher education? Weren't they here to seek better resources? What are you doing now? Other people are training in the dimensional space, practicing tactics, and honing their skills, but you can only run laps." As soon as he finished speaking, Jiang Xiao hurriedly focused his attention, for he knew that the ball was coming again. Move, bang. Jiang Xiao covered his buttocks and thought, "Damn it, aren't I already a diamond? Why does it still hurt so much?" "Because you are a rookie at the nebulous stage. You're not even a Star Warrior. You're only fit to run laps here." Qin Wangchuan stopped the football. Jiang Xiao looked at Qin Wangchuan with a bitter expression. "Chuan is so strict. I really want to twist your head off and kick it like a ball." Look at Gu Shiren. He was already at the peak of the cosmic cloud state. "How about you, Jiang Xiaopi? What did you do during your vacation? Was it fun to play Fight the Landlord? Was it fun to eat skewers and sing karaoke?" Qin Wangchuan said as he picked up the football and volleyed it into the air. Jiang Xiao was running frantically when he suddenly felt the star power fluctuations in his body. "Turn around. Dig." Jiang Xiao turned around abruptly and kicked the football back without removing the ball. He didn't know how to play football, nor did he know how to do it. He simply kicked the ball back, but he didn't grasp the angle well and kicked the ball high into the air. "Jiang Xiaopi, you're really something. How dare you? Qin Huangchuan stopped abruptly because he could acutely sense the intense star power fluctuations coming from Jiang Zhao's body. Is this advancing to the star power realm? Qin Huangchuan was dumbfounded. Seriously? Did he just get scolded? Advancing to the star power realm required a massive influx of star power to help the Star Warrior break through the shackles. In other words, one had to absorb high-quality star beads. This Jiang Xiaopi, he's just running laps like a dead dog, and he hasn't absorbed any star beads at all. How can he advance to the star power realm? Such a level of star power fluctuations was definitely not a small increase in the realm. Instead, it should be a state that would only appear when one was breaking through a barrier. Qin Huangchuan knew that Jiang Xiao had been in the late nebulous stage. Is he going to break through to the peak of the nebulous stage? In fact, Jiang Zhao's star power had always been sufficient, and he had long reached the peak of the star power realm. In fact, he could even be considered half a step into the galaxy. He didn't need any external help to advance to the star power realm. All he needed was his physique to keep up. Qin Huangchuan frantically searched for star beads in his pocket, but he had been training Jiang Xiao since last night. Hence, he didn't have any high-quality star beads with him. Qin Huangchuan was a little anxious and frantically said, "Countercurrent light, hang it on me. It's better than nothing. I'll work harder and try to channel star power to you." As soon as he finished speaking, the star power fluctuations on Jiang Zhao's body disappeared without a trace. Duh. At the same time, the football that flew high up in the sky also fell down again. Qin Huangchuan was dumbfounded. Is it over? Did he succeed or not? He probably didn't succeed. Why is it so short? Jiang Xiao slowly exhaled and suppressed the star power that was running around in his body. His chest was burning hot, and he felt like he had just drunk a cup of hot liquor. Qin Huangchuan walked over and said with concern, "It's all right. Remember this state. With the experience of the first breakthrough, the chances of success will be higher next time." Jiang Xiao said meekly, "Put away your concerned face. I need ruthless motivation and violent training." Qin Huangchuan was dumbfounded. "I've reached the peak, Teacher Qin." Jiang Xiao sighed and shook his head before continuing to run. Qin Huangchuan was completely stunned. What? That's the peak? Who didn't break through a realm with great momentum and great momentum? Why do you look like you're joking? Qin Huangchuan was stunned for a while before running up with the ball and passing it to Jiang Xiao. Jiang Xiao stretched out his leg to catch the ball, but his technique wasn't good, and he managed to stop the ball more than 2 meters away. Great. Jiang Xiao clenched his fists and thought to himself, "I should be qualified to join the national team just because I managed to stop the ball." Qin Huangchuan caught up with him, and while running with the ball, he turned around and asked, "Have you reached the peak?" Jiang Xiao rolled his eyes and said, "Will I get anything good out of lying to you?" Qin Huangchuan nodded silently and said, "Seems like you've been training very hard during the holidays." Jiang Xiao looked up at the sky and said, "Maybe the instructors of the Guardians of the Night have a higher standard of training than the instructors of the Wasteland Reclaimers." Qin Huangchuan's face stiffened, and he immediately kicked the ball forcefully, causing it to hit Jiang Zhao's buttocks with a whoosh. Then, Qin Huangchuan roared furiously, "Run! Break through to the Galaxy River today." Jiang Xiao was speechless. Qin Huangchuan looked at Jiang Xiao, who was sprinting at full speed, and secretly nodded in his heart. Jiang Xiao was just a child who had yet to reach adulthood. Although he was mischievous on the surface, he was extremely calm and composed. Who wouldn't be overjoyed to break through to the star power realm? He looked at Jiang Xiao again and realized that he wasn't the one who broke through just now. He was neither arrogant nor rash as he continued running. "You're worth teaching. You're worth teaching." Qin Huangchuan didn't let Jiang Xiao run until he died. The two of them trained until about 7 o'clock and went to the canteen together for lunch. The Chinese food and dinner for the Wasteland Reclaimers were prepared by the professional chefs of the Wasteland Reclaimers, but there was no breakfast. Jiang Xiao and Qin Huangchuan each ordered a bowl of tofu pudding, a few trays of steamed buns, and a few side dishes before sitting down to eat. Interestingly, due to the fact that this was an international metropolis, The old man selling breakfast even asked Jiang Shao if he wanted sweet or savory tofu pudding. Jiang Shao and Qin Wanchuan were both from the three northern provinces. Hence, sweet tofu pudding was nothing to them. Jiang Shao ordered a serving of sweet tofu pudding and got ready to try the food of the heretics. He took a bite of the sweet tofu pudding. It's quite delicious. Jiang Shao scratched his head and took another bite. While the two of them were eating breakfast, Jiang Shao said, "The registration for the World Cup is about to begin." Qin Wanchuan looked at Jiang Shao and asked, "What's the matter?" Jiang Shao knew that what he said was not accurate. Hence, he repeated, "The registration for the school selection is about to begin." Qin Wanchuan nodded and said yes. Jiang Shao thought about it and continued, "Let's put the World Cup selection aside for now. I heard that in order to participate in the school registration, one has to be recommended by 3 Beijing Star Warrior teachers. Besides, these teachers can't be clerical, but military. They can only be teachers related to practical lessons." Qin Wanchuan clearly misunderstood and said, "Don't worry, although your sister doesn't have a practical teacher, the Wasteland Reclaimers are teaching jointly with Beijing Star Warrior. Her Wasteland Reclaimer instructor will be considered a practical teacher, and he'll recommend her." Qin Wanchuan took a bite of the dumpling and continued, "However, it's indeed difficult for Year 1 students to get recommended. The Year 3 and Year 4 students have followed many practical teachers and participated in many training missions. They know many teachers, but Han Jiangxue doesn't know many practical teachers." Seeing that Jiang Shao was deep in thought, Qin Wanchuan smiled and said, "The team that your sister is in is very powerful. The captain and team members will help your sister get the recommendation." Jiang Shao nodded and asked, "What about me?" Qin Wanchuan had just taken a sip of the tofu pudding when he hurriedly turned his head away and coughed for a while. He then picked up a napkin to wipe his mouth and turned to look at Jiang Shao. "Are you going to participate in the World Cup?" Jiang Shao blinked and said, "Ah." Qin Wanchuan looked at Jiang Shao with a peculiar expression and said, "I thought the rumors were false and you were just joking. Are you really going to participate?" Jiang Shao said, "Ah." Qin Wanchuan asked, "Do you have a team?" Jiang Shao said, "I'm participating in the individual competition. Can you find a few Wasteland Reclaimers for me to write a recommendation letter for?" Qin Wanchuan stared at Jiang Shao and pondered for a while, seemingly thinking about how to phrase his words. He said, "Xiaopi, I know that you have a certain level of ability and have achieved certain results. You're very confident and want to win glory for the country. However, the international competition is not the same as the domestic competition, especially since your support. You'll be at a disadvantage in the individual competition." Qin Wanchuan looked at Jiang Shao with a solemn expression and said, "I can't promise to write a recommendation letter for you. The international competition is not only about your personal glory, but also the glory of the country. You can't mess around." Jiang Shao waved his hand casually and said, "I'll use my abilities to conquer you." Qin Wanchuan was dumbfounded. Apex. Chapter 471. In the arena, Jiang Shao and Qin Wanchuan stood facing each other. Jiang Zhao's body was tense, and his current posture was a typical feint. His front leg was weak and his back was solid. His front leg was pointed at the ground, and a giant sword was slanted in front of him. Behind the thick, giant sword, Jiang Shao only revealed one eye and stared at Qin Wanchuan. Qin Wanchuan, who was opposite him, was extremely astonished at this moment. To Qin Wanchuan, the battle had opened the door to a new world. He knew that Jiang Shao had a 1v2 battle record in the National League and even challenged a melee fighter. However, the melee fighter was in the nebulous stage, after all. Qin Wanchuan did not expect Jiang Shao to be able to defend so well with his extremely skilled swordsmanship. This kid is just a rookie in the nebulous stage. Yet, he's engaged in a fierce battle with me, the king of the galaxy stage. Qin Wanchuan could tell that there were many times when Jiang Zhao's body had already moved before his brain could react. Such muscle memory and a keen sense of life and death could only be developed in the endless battles on the battlefield. What standards did the Guardians of the Night use to groom this kid? Damn it, he's supposed to be a support. Why did he specialize in melee combat? Could it be that what Jiang Shao said before wasn't a joke? Is the coach of the Guardians of the Night really better than me? Qin Huangquan initially didn't take Jiang Shao seriously. In fact, he didn't even use any star techniques. He thought that he could easily trample on Jiang Shao with his physical fitness. He thought that he could teach Jiang Shao a lesson and dispel his thoughts of participating in the World Cup. However, Qin Huangquan realized that he was gravely wrong. Yes, Jiang Zhao's physical fitness might be suppressed in all aspects, but Jiang Zhao's defensive abilities and defensive techniques made Qin Huangquan doubt his life. What level of swordsmanship is this? What kind of talent is this? The giant sword actually felt like a dagger. Qin Huangquan had lost count of the number of times he had been sent flying by the gold-quality green glow, all sorts of attacks, blocking, slashing, horizontal, and vertical. The child's movements were extremely small, which greatly made up for the difference in physical attributes. Should I use my star technique? Qin Huangquan looked at Jiang Shao from afar, as if he was looking at a metal bucket. No, it was a barbed metal bucket. What does it mean to be at ease? What do you mean by airtight? Are you really a support? Did you change your profession while I wasn't paying attention? Do I really have to use star techniques? Qin Huangquan was deeply conflicted. It was already considered bullying for the King of Galaxy to go against the Nebula. Yet, the King of Galaxy still wanted to use his star technique. Jiang Shao stood quietly on the spot and said, "Your heart is in a mess. Your punches are too slow." Qin Huangquan, is this kid teaching me a lesson? Jiang Shao looked at Qin Huangquan warily. He didn't take the initiative to attack. The battle with Minister Song Chuanxi was still fresh in his mind. Regardless of whether one was in the galaxy or in the galaxy, as long as one was in the galaxy, one's physique would not be a joke. Given that Qin Huangquan's physique was superior to his, Jiang Shao was always standing on the edge of the cliff. If he was not careful, he would lose everything. In fact, the difference between galaxy and galaxy might sound huge, but that was due to the difference in the total amount of star power and the usable star techniques. There was no major threshold for the galaxy stage, and their physique was on the same level as that of the galaxy stage. However, if one wanted to advance to the galaxy stage, they would definitely have to put in more effort than others. Hence, generally speaking, the physique of the galaxy stage was better than that of the galaxy stage, but there was no qualitative difference. Jiang Shao said, "You're just a support. Don't blame yourself." Qin Huangquan was dumbfounded. "I'm a support, but you're not? Is this kid comforting me or provoking me?" Jiang Shao was still talking trash and disturbing Qin Huangquan's mind. However, his trash talk was more civilized. All your skills are used to cooperate with your teammates and the Wasteland Reclaimers. You're a soldier and you can't help yourself. The team is your home field. Jiang Shao continued. Qin Jiao, leave the team and focus on individual competition. Your star techniques can't form a self-perfecting system. Don't even think about using your star techniques. You'll lose even more miserably. Phew. Qin Huangquan covered his chest with one hand and took a deep breath. When he felt the veins on his forehead throbbing, he realized that there was really something wrong with his mentality. Hence, he began to consciously adjust himself. Jiang Shao thought to himself, "Oh no, has my little scheme been exposed?" Jiang Shao hurriedly increased his verbal attacks. "Qin Jiao, although you're from Galaxy, you're the king of the army. I might be from Star Cloud, but I'm also a member of the World Cup. Our battlefields are different, our star technique combinations are different, and we have our own specialties." A thick fog suddenly emanated from Qin Huangquan's body like a Hollywood special effects blockbuster. The scene was extremely strange and cool. Jiang Zhao's eyes narrowed, and he yelled, "Are you really going to use your star technique? Don't you have any shame?" Jiang Shao cast a sound of silence. However, he heard Qin Huangquan making a strange nasal sound. He reckoned that he must have been in great pain during the process of casting the star technique. Besides, the area of Sound of Silence was also a place where sound was prohibited. Hence, it caused such a special situation. In the next 2 seconds, the area where Qin Wangchuan was located was already filled with thick fog, and he could not be seen at all. Sound of Silence actually didn't stop him from casting the star technique. Jiang Shao hurriedly cast Sound of Silence, but apart from the first time he heard Qin Wangchuan's pained voice, he didn't hear anything else. The huge arena was soon surrounded by thick fog, and Qin Wangchuan was nowhere to be seen. All of a sudden, a pitch-black ray of light wrapped around Jiang Shao. Fortunately, it was dark in color. Otherwise, Jiang Shao might not have been able to discover it in the extremely low visibility fog without a clear contrast. Jiang Shao hurriedly dodged, but what happened next was beyond Jiang Zhao's scope of knowledge. The pitch-black ray of light brushed past Jiang Shao and suddenly turned around like a snake. It even forked and rolled towards Jiang Shao. Jiang Shao leaned back abruptly and dodged the first black snake, but his ankle was entangled by the second black snake. At the next moment, Jiang Shao felt that the star power in his body was a little chaotic. Although he could move his feet, he seemed to have been restrained by a rope and could only move in small range. Qin Wangchuan was a wasteland reclaimer, and his star technique combination was, of course, a divine star technique. Jiang Shao was restrained from the inside out from head to toe. Firstly, Jiang Zhao's Sound of Silence lost its effect. The fog that Qin Wangchuan emitted had the effect of purifying the polluted area. In such a dense fog, even if Qin Wangchuan exposed his location, Jiang Zhao's Sound of Silence wouldn't be able to last in the fog and would be purified almost instantly. Secondly, Jiang Zhao's weakness of not having a perception-type star technique was exposed again. He couldn't find Qin Wangchuan's location. Thirdly, if Jiang Shao was a heavy-duty star warrior like Han Jiangxue, he should be able to get out of the predicament. He actually couldn't slash the pitch-black snake on his body and had no idea where its roots were. Jiang Shao was restrained by it and could only move within a 5-step radius. Qin Wangchuan was fighting Jiang Shao like a monster in the Wasteland Reclaimer map. Jiang Shao hollered angrily, "Thank you, Qin Wangchuan. I'm a freaking awakened in the nebulous stage, not a demonic fire master in the Inferno Court." In the fog, Qin Wangchuan's voice could be vaguely heard. Even an eagle should use all its strength to catch a rabbit. Finally, Qin Wangchuan regained his identity as a teacher and gave his apprentice a lesson. Jiang Shao gripped the blade tightly and said, "What you've done will be trending and on the headlines tonight." Jiang Shao looked around vigilantly and muttered softly, "The King of Galaxy is shamelessly bullying the children of Nebula. The Wasteland Reclaimer coach is hiding and doesn't dare to fight head-on." Huh. That's pretty rhyming. In the thick fog, Qin Wangchuan's voice sounded again. "You're now unable to break out of the predicament and have exposed at least 3 of your weaknesses." Jiang Shao pursed his lips and said, "You've only come up with 3? I've already come up with 4. You should give me another negative status and expose my weakness that I don't have the purification star technique." Qin Wangchuan was speechless. Immediately, Jiang Shao felt the changes in his body. In the thick fog, Jiang Shao felt that his physical attributes were being strengthened. After all, Qin Wangchuan was still a support. Although he used the purifying fog to resist the domain of silence and hide his body, the special effect of the purifying fog was also reflected on Jiang Shao, which was that it would increase the physical attributes of the target in the fog. Jiang Shao was full of confidence, but he was also tensed up. "Scoundrel, come out and fight me." In the fog, Qin Wangchuan actually revealed his figure and stood a few meters away from Jiang Shao. He said, "You've already lost." Jiang Shao raised his eyebrows and asked, "I've lost?" Qin Wangchuan didn't go all out and didn't use any offensive star techniques, but that didn't mean that he didn't have any. Qin Wangchuan said, "I have to admit that your melee combat skills have amazed me. However, I'm just a support, and most of the contestants in the World Cup are melee fighters. They're all kings of combat. Your skills won't stand a chance against them." Jiang Shao humphed and said, "You're wrong. Melee fighters have their own ways of fighting. It's impossible for them to be like you and have so many auxiliary star techniques. Besides, you can even tie me up. Do you think there's such a person in the world who has such powerful auxiliary star techniques and extremely powerful melee combat skills? Does such a person exist?" Qin Wanchuan said, Jiang Zhao's eyes lit up and he said, "Hey, wait a minute. I seem to be one." Qin Wanchuan was dumbfounded. The two of them stared at each other. In the end, Qin Wanchuan still didn't use any offensive star techniques. He simply said, "You're now a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. A defeat is a defeat." Jiang Zhao's eyes widened. "Me? Defeated? Come on." Jiang Shao suddenly spun the giant sword and stabbed it into the ground. He then said to Qin Wanchuan, "Come on, I'm going to stand here and not move today. I'll let you hit me." Qin Wanchuan's eyes widened too, and he suddenly realized that the toxic healer was so domineering. Despite being in such a predicament and facing the King of Galaxy, he still had the confidence to do so. At least in terms of his mental and physical state, he was really ready to participate in the World Cup. Jiang Shao said, "I know you have a lot of star power. Let's just wait here. Let's see if I lose first or if your star power is depleted first." Qin Wanchuan smiled and shook his head before saying, "I have a star technique that allows me to recover star power. In theory, my star power is inexhaustible." Jiang Shao scratched his head and said, "Don't talk nonsense. Come hit me. If you don't dare to get close to me, use whatever star techniques you have. Grandpa, take them. I'll take them all." Your gold endurance does indeed give you the confidence to do so. Qin Wanchuan had clearly adjusted his mental state. He continued with a smile, "Your range of movement is so small. There's no need for you to fight at all. I can make you fall asleep. Who do you think will win?" However, Jiang Shao retorted, "I'm in the fog. I can't fall asleep." Qin Wanchuan said, "I can cancel the fog of purification." Jiang Shao said, "Then I'll silence you. You won't dare to cancel it." Qin Wanchuan shrugged and said in a carefree manner, "I can retreat to the back of the field and let the fog only envelop me." Jiang Shao carefully searched for a while before saying, "When I find a suitable purification star technique, I'll have a complete system." Hearing this, Qin Wanchuan nodded, but he shook his head and said, "Purification can indeed make up for your weakness, but you still can't break out of the predicament." While speaking, Qin Wanchuan pointed at the dark lines and said, "You're still tied up like a fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. How about this?" Qin Wanchuan casually threw out a few dark balls of light that scattered everywhere. At the next moment, countless dark lines darted out of the fog like countless venomous snakes, entangling Jiang Zhao's waist, arms, thighs, ankles, and even neck tightly. Qin Wanchuan looked at Jiang Shao and said, "I don't need you to defeat me. If you can think of a way to break out of the predicament, I'll write you a letter of recommendation." Jiang Zhao's body kept struggling, but this time, he couldn't even move 5 steps away. He couldn't even move his body now. That's probably what the ancient torture of being dismembered by 5 horses is like, right? Next, I'll have to tear him apart in all directions. Really? You're going to write me a letter of recommendation just because I came out? Jiang Shao said with a frown, looking extremely upset. Qin Wanchuan nodded and said, "Every World Cup player has his own system. You'll definitely encounter such a situation. If you can't handle such a situation, why would I write a letter of recommendation for you? Would I watch you get eliminated in the first round of the school qualifiers? I'm a prideful person." Jiang Shao raised his head abruptly and looked at Qin Wanchuan in shock. The meaning in his eyes was obvious. "You? Prideful?" Qin Wanchuan's face turned sullen, and he said, "Within 5 minutes. When you come out, I'll write you a letter of recommendation." Whoosh! Qin Wanchuan felt his vision blur, and countless dark lines collapsed and scattered on the ground. Beside him, the buzzcut boy leaned over and placed his elbow on Qin Wanchuan's shoulder. "I heard that you're going to write a letter of recommendation for me? TSK, TSK. Sorry to trouble you." Qin Huangchuan turned around abruptly with a look of disbelief. Teleportation? Flash? Teleportation? Qin Huangchuan swallowed his saliva and thought, is this a star technique that you should have? A second ago, the toxic healer was still frowning and gritting his teeth, trying to think of a way to break out of the predicament. A second later, the toxic healer broke out of the predicament and put his arm around Qin Huangchuan's shoulder. Have I been tricked? This kid could have broken out of the predicament long ago. Has he been putting on an act? Is he waiting for me to say that I'll write him a letter of recommendation when I come out? Qin Huangchuan suddenly felt his blood pressure rising and his head spinning. Chapter 472. A gentleman would never go back on his word. Qin Huangchuan was a gentleman, so he wrote a letter of recommendation for Jiang Shao. However, Jiang Shao could tell from his sullen expression that his heart was trembling. In the office of the Wasteland Reclaimers of the Beijing Star Warriors University, Jiang Shao received a letter of recommendation from Qin Huangchuan. While looking at the pleasing words, Jiang Shao nodded secretly. However, he saw some traces of distortion on the signature Qin Huangchuan. Similarly, the distortion also appeared on a few phrases in the letter. For example, recommendation, recognition. These words were written in a slightly messy handwriting, and they were completely out of place with the rest of the text. Jiang Shao nodded and said, "Your heart is in a mess. Your pen is trembling." Qin Huangchuan was speechless. Jiang Shao put away the letter of recommendation and said, "Teacher Qin, please find a few more instructors in the Wasteland Reclaimers to write recommendations for me." Qin Huangchuan calmed himself down and said, "I'll write it for you. It's our bet. If you want to make a recommendation, you'll have to get the approval of the other Wasteland Reclaimers. There's no room for fraud in the World Cup." Jiang Shao nodded. He didn't feel that Qin Huangchuan was unreasonable. Instead, he felt that he was very responsible. Being responsible to Jiang Shao, the school, and the country was the same as being responsible. Again, participating in the World Cup is no longer about your personal behavior, your personal honor or disgrace. It concerned the honor of the country, and it couldn't be faked. Jiang Shao pondered for a while and said, "Excuse me, is there anyone else in this batch of Wasteland Reclaimers who is as competent as you are?" Qin Huangchuan was dumbfounded. Jiang Shao could clearly sense that Qin Huangchuan had just calmed down and was getting agitated again. Qin Huangchuan stood up and looked around the office, muttering to himself, "Where's my ball?" Jiang Shao was speechless. While Qin Huangchuan was looking for the ball, Jiang Shao quietly left the office. After taking a few steps, he was called back by Qin Huangchuan. Jiang Shao smiled and walked back to the office carefully, thinking that he had really found the football. However, Qin Huangchuan asked, "Was your star technique teleportation given to you by your parents too?" Jiang Shao shook his head and told the truth. "No, it's the reward for the champion of the National League. To be exact, it's the reward for the most valuable student in the finals. The prize for the champion is the White Mountain Fog Star Bead, while the prize for the FMVP is the Void Calamity Shadow Star Bead." Qin Huangchuan's eyes lit up. "It should be called the space-time gap?" Jiang Shao nodded and said, "Yes, the space-time rift. Every time I use it now, my star power will almost be depleted, so I rarely use it." Qin Huangchuan thought for a moment and said, "When did you absorb it?" Jiang Shao scratched his head and said, "A few days ago, when I was training with the instructor who was on guard duty at night, I felt something strange. Originally, I planned to keep it for later, at least after the Galaxy stage. After all, the success rate would be higher that way, but something happened." Qin Huangchuan frowned and looked at Jiang Shao, seemingly having guessed something. Jiang Shao shrugged helplessly and said, "A few days ago, there was an accident when I was training. I had no choice but to absorb the star bead." Qin Huangchuan nodded. He could imagine what kind of dangerous situation Jiang Shao had to go through to absorb the star bead. "You're really lucky." At this point, Qin Huangchuan said with some dissatisfaction, "The Guardians of the Night have a unique training method for you. You're an adult. You're going to be an adult soon. You have to have your own judgment. From the battle between you and me just now, I can't imagine what kind of dangerous training the Guardians of the Night has given you. Your skills and sense of smell were honed through real battles. You've been blessed by your parents and have some high-quality star beads. Your star map is also extremely compatible with the auxiliary-type star techniques, which makes it easier for you to absorb them. That makes up for your lack of star slots and your low qualifications. It will also allow you to exert your abilities better. However, you have to remember that your main purpose is to support, not output. Jiang Xiao nodded. No matter what, Qin Wangchuan had good intentions. Qin Wangchuan should have been rather surprised by Jiang Zhao's melee combat skills. It was definitely a good thing that Jiang Xiao was strong in melee combat, and Qin Wangchuan was willing to see it too. However, Qin Wangchuan was afraid that Jiang Xiao would go astray in the future. Qin Wangchuan said earnestly, "You have to know where your advantages are and where your roots are. You have 9 star slots, and your qualifications are so low, but you can have 2 star techniques in 1 star slot. That shows that your star map is extremely compatible with the auxiliary-type star techniques. That's also the reason why you can absorb other auxiliary-type star techniques. You have to grasp your future path well." Okay. Jiang Xiao nodded continuously. Qin Wangchuan suddenly hesitated for a while before saying, "Can you show me your star map? If you still can't get over it, you don't have to light it up." Since Qin Wangchuan could take Jiang Xiao in as his disciple, he definitely had a comprehensive understanding of him. He also knew why Jiang Xiao had never lit up his star map. According to Principal Yin of Jiangbin High School, Jiang Xiao was ridiculed after he awakened his star map, which left a deep trauma in his heart. Since then, he refused to open his star map in front of others. Jiang Xiao had already gone all the way to the national finals and even participated in a 1v2 battle. It was related to the years of hard work of everyone in the team, the bonus points for the college entrance examination, the championship, and even the future development of the students. Even at such a critical moment, Jiang Xiao had never lit up his star map. One could imagine how much Jiang Xiao resisted lighting up his star map. Of course, Jiang Xiao had to admit that. Although the reasons were different, the outcome was the same. Jiang Xiao was extremely resistant to lighting up his star map. Jiang Xiao was stunned for a moment and hesitated for a long time before reluctantly agreeing to Qin Wangchuan. Okay. Jiang Xiao then opened his Big Dipper star map in front of Qin Wangchuan. All of a sudden, there was a flash of gold and silver, including a platinum star slot, which made the entire star map seem even more impressive. Jiang Xiao felt that it was a piece of cake for him. If I were to show you my real star map, you would probably be shocked to death. Does having a platinum star slot make me a noble? Does that make me more impressive? My star map is filled with platinum. There's even a dazzling diamond. Platinum that you guys can't even get your hands on is just a common commodity for me. However, Jiang Xiao dared not say it out loud. He was afraid of being beaten to death. Qin Wangchuan was full of admiration as he stared at Jiang Zhao's star map silently for a long time. He then exclaimed, "It's really platinum space-time rift. If that's the case, you might really be able to try participating in the World Cup." Jiang Xiao did not respond to that. Qin Wangchuan pointed at the second gold star slot above Jiang Zhao's lower abdomen and asked, "These are gold quality endurance and green glow, right?" Jiang Xiao nodded. Qin Wangchuan thought about it and said, "How many gold quality white ghoul star beads did Brother Han leave for you?" Jiang Zhao's mind raced, and he said 5. Jiang Xiao then said in a slightly dejected manner, "Be it silver quality white ghoul star beads or gold quality white ghoul star beads, they were all smashed into my body. In the end, I managed to exchange for gold quality green glow and endurance. Otherwise, my sister would also have gold quality green glow and endurance. Even if she only has gold quality endurance, it'll still be a huge improvement for her." Qin Wangchuan comforted Jiang Xiao and said, "She did that because she loves you. Compared to you, she has more star slots to absorb other defensive star techniques." At this point, Qin Wangchuan continued, "Don't blame me for forcing you to light up your star map. If you want to participate in the World Cup, you have to light up your star map. This time, I'm giving you a mental preparation." Jiang Xiao said, "Okay." Qin Wangchuan said, "Besides, have you registered your star technique, space-time rift, with the Star Association?" Jiang Xiao shook his head. With a solemn expression, Qin Wangchuan said, "Let's go and register it with me now." Jiang Xiao asked, "Huh?" Qin Wangchuan stood up and walked out. He said, "Fortunately, you don't use it often. Otherwise, if others saw it and reported it to the Star Association, you'd be in big trouble. This is an extremely rare space-type star technique. You have to register it with the Star Association." Jiang Xiao hurriedly caught up with him. I just absorbed it a few days ago." Qin Wangchuan finally looked a little better and said, "You can't take such matters lightly, nor can you procrastinate. Go back to the dormitory now and get your ID card, Star Martial Arts certificate, and student ID. I'll wait for you at the north gate of the school." Jiang Xiao asked, "Do I need to bring the Wasteland Reclaimer Apprentice Recruitment Certificate? My ID number is Thief Pretty. It's KX1100001. Qin Wangchuan kicked Jiang Xiao's butt and exclaimed, "Hurry up and get it." Jiang Xiao pursed his lips. "There's no need to look for a ball now. You could just kick me, right? I didn't use my strength to conquer you just now, did I? Just you wait. In the middle of the night, I'll cover myself with a white bedsheet and appear at your bedside, scaring you to death." Jiang Xiao hurriedly returned to the dormitory, only to find that there was no one inside. He had no idea where Gu Shiren had gone. After grabbing his 3 IDs, Jiang Xiao realized that he still lacked 2 IDs. One was the Wasteland Reclaimer ID, while the other was the Guardians of the Night ID. TSK. Would my life be complete? Wait, I almost forgot the most important thing. She also needed to add a marriage certificate. Chapter 473. With Qin Wangchuan's help, Jiang Xiao successfully completed the registration. From then on, Jiang Xiao was considered a man who had a record in the Star Warriors Association. Due to the fact that the capital Star Warriors University had just reopened, the Year 1 students were all let out for training by the school's teachers. Hence, Jiang Xiao did not have any classes, and his training time was arranged by Qin Wangchuan. After a night of training and registration, the two of them only returned to the capital Star Warriors University at noon. Qin Wangchuan was merciful and gave Jiang Xiao a day off. Jiang Xiao's mind began to race. He still needed 2 recommendation letters. Who should I get these 2 recommendation letters from? Compared to the regular practical teachers in the capital Star Warriors University, the Wasteland Reclamation instructors should be stronger. Besides, they were all people who had gone through real life and death battles and should be more dangerous. However, the teachers in the capital Star Warriors University were different. Even if they would not be soft-hearted, they would at least look at the children from the perspective of a teacher. At the thought of this, Jiang Xiao thought of teacher Hugu's bald head. He had no choice. He had only carried out missions under this practical teacher. In the dormitory, Jiang Xiao lay lazily on the bed, trying his best to suppress his sleepiness, and sent a letter to Baldy Hu. Unfortunately, after waiting for a long time, Baldy Hu did not reply. He reckoned that he should be bringing his students to train in the dimensional space. Jiang Xiao decided to wait for him to come back. After thinking about it, Jiang Xiao finally realized to his dismay that he really didn't know many practical teachers. The only one he was familiar with was an extremely powerful practical teacher who could almost represent the top combat power in the capital Star Warriors University. It was the practical teacher who resisted the Yin Tribunal's entrance single-handedly, Fang Xingyun. Back then, when Judge Yin had opened, so many teachers had rushed over. Why was it that Fang Xingyun was the only one who had attracted the cheers of the 3rd-year and 4th-year students? That indirectly proved Fang Xingyun's strength. So, should I ask her for a recommendation letter? Why not give it a try? She's so gentle, so her request shouldn't be too excessive or dangerous, right? Jiang Xiao thought about it and finally decided to give teacher Fang Xingyun a call. He wondered how the fair, rich, and beautiful girl was getting along with Hai Tianqing. Sigh, I'm so incompetent as a matchmaker. I haven't been concerned about how the two of them are doing for a long time. Beep, Beep. The call was quickly connected, and Teacher Fong's gentle voice came from the other side. There was even a hint of joy in it. Xiaopi. Ah. Jiang Xiao sat up on the bed and rubbed his eyes. Hello, Teacher Fong. Fong Xingyun's gentle laughter could be heard from the other end of the phone. Teacher is very good. Have you reported back to school? Shouldn't the first-year students be out training? What happened? Hearing her slightly nervous and concerned words, Jiang Xiao hurriedly said, It's all right. It's all right. You've forgotten that I'm a wasteland reclaimer apprentice. I don't go on adventures with the team. Oh, right. Shrimpy is a famous wasteland reclamation apprentice, Fong Xingyun said with a smile. Jiang Xiao held his forehead helplessly. She was indeed very gentle, but the way she coaxed him like a primary school student really made Jiang Xiao feel frustrated. Perhaps in Fong Xingyun's heart, be it the overlord of Galaxy Han Jiangxiu or the rookie Jiang Xiao, they were all children. Seeing that Jiang Xiao did not speak for a long time, Fong Xingyun said, What's the matter? Shrimpy? Do you want to eat hot pot? Jiang Xiao scratched his head and said, The second half of the semester has begun, and the school is about to select the team members for the World Cup. Fong Xingyun asked, Jiang Xiao continued, I want you to write a recommendation letter for me. According to the school's rules, only those recommended by 3 or more practical teachers are qualified to participate in the selection. Fong Xingyun was obviously very surprised. She had thought of many reasons for this toxic healer to look for her, but she never expected that he was actually looking for her for a recommendation letter. Fong Xingyun exclaimed in surprise and did not speak again. Jiang Xiao felt a little awkward too. On the other end of the phone, the two of them remained silent for a long time. Jiang Xiao was the first to break the silence and asked meekly, How are you getting along with Teacher Hai? It's all right, Fong Xingyun said in a low voice. Clearly, she had misunderstood what Jiang Xiao meant. Of course, that was inevitable. The world of adults was very complicated. Jiang Xiao's words to ease the awkward atmosphere were naturally interpreted by Fong Xingyun as Jiang Xiao trying to establish a relationship with her and ask for a favor. However, she heard Fong Xingyun say, Shrimpy, I know that you are very confident and very capable. You have reached such a high level at such a young age, but Fong Xingyun did not blame Jiang Xiao for asking for a favor. She still rejected Jiang Xiao with a proper reason. Jiang Xiao also thought that he would hear something similar to what Qin Wangchuan had said to reject him and educate him. However, Fong Xingyun stopped halfway through her sentence. On the other end of the phone, Fong Xingyun changed the topic and said, Shrimpy, have you had lunch? Not yet, Jiang Xiao answered truthfully. I'll wait for you at the north gate of the school in 20 minutes. I'll take you to eat hot pot. Fong Xingyun invited him. Jiang Xiao slapped his thigh, feeling extremely regretful. He was really sleepy, extremely sleepy. If he had known that he could eat hot pot with just a phone call, he would have called at night. He would have slept in the dormitory for the entire afternoon and eaten hot pot at night. Wouldn't that be great? No matter how humble and gentle Ms. Fong was, she had a high status, and Jiang Xiao had a favor to ask of her. Hence, Jiang Xiao could not reject her. All right, I'll ask for the spiciest hot pot soup later. That way, I won't feel sleepy anymore, right? Jiang Xiao thought to himself and agreed to Fong Xingyun's invitation. After hanging up the phone, Jiang Xiao got up and got dressed. Winter was troublesome as he had to wear so many clothes. In the summer, he could just get up and put on his slippers. After putting on his clothes, Jiang Xiao walked out of the dormitory. 2 minutes later, Jiang Xiao returned and put the recommendation letter that Qin Wangchuan had written for him in the morning into the folder. He then walked out of the dormitory again. 20 minutes later, Jiang Xiao stood at the north gate of the school, wearing a thick white down jacket and a mask. He attracted the curious gazes of many students. Since this was the capital Star Warrior University, it was different from the outside world. No matter how Jiang Xiao disguised himself, the students would have an impression of him and would be able to recognize him. When Fong Xingyun stopped the car in front of Jiang Xiao, he had just signed an autograph for a senior. Jiang Xiao hurriedly got into the car. Looking at Jiang Xiao's palms that were red from the cold, Fang Xingyin turned up the air conditioning in the car by 2 degrees. She looked at Jiang Xiao smilingly and said, "Where's the celebrity?" He. Jiang Xiao scratched his head and looked at the gentle middle-aged woman in front of him. He laughed awkwardly and asked, "Where are we going?" Fang Xingyin said, "That depends on you. What time do you start training in the afternoon?" Jiang Xiao took off his mask and said honestly, "I'm on leave today." "Oh." Fang Xingyin slowly started the car and did not question the training plan of the Wasteland Reclaimers. She said, "In that case, we have a lot of time. Let's go to a good shop." As Fang Xingyin spoke, she took out her phone and unlocked it with her fingerprint. She then threw the phone to Jiang Xiao and said, "Address book, Qida Yuan. Book a place." "Oh." Jiang Xiao opened the address book obediently and found Qida Yuan. "What kind of name is that? Why haven't I heard of it before?" 1.5 hours later, the car slowly stopped in front of a restaurant. Fang Xingyin turned to look at Jiang Xiao, only to find that he was in a deep sleep. Fang Xingyin smiled helplessly, bent her finger, and gently knocked Jiang Xiao's head. "Wake up. Do you smell the fragrance?" "Yes." Jiang Xiao opened his sleepy eyes. God was his witness. He didn't want to be so rude. He really didn't sleep the entire night. In fact, it was fine if he didn't sleep the entire night. The key was that he had been training intensely the entire night and was really mentally exhausted. Jiang Xiao hurriedly opened the car door and got out. He then followed Fang Xingyun into the huge restaurant. The exterior of the building was antique, and the interior decoration was even more eye-catching. The screens, murals, rockery, and the lavender unknown flowering trees added a poetic and picturesque atmosphere to the place. Walking towards the inner hall, the customer's modern attire was incompatible with this place. In the center of the square table in the hall, there was a steaming copper hot pot. It was already past 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but the atmosphere here was still lively. Jiang Xiao raised his head and looked past the second floor to the third floor. He reckoned that there were private rooms on that floor. The waiter brought the two of them to the second floor and found a medium-sized cubicle in the building that looked like a cloister. The two of them then sat down. Fang Xingyin handed the menu to Jiang Xiao and said, "What would you like to eat?" Jiang Xiao flipped open the menu and flipped through it. He wanted to eat something and then flipped through it. "You can order, teacher." Jiang Xiao handed the menu back. If he continued flipping through it, Jiang Xiao was afraid that he would tell the waiter to give him a menu. Fang Xingyin smiled and took the menu. While looking down at the dishes, she said, "You don't have to be so polite. When you're outside, you can call me Sister Fang or Sister Yin." Looking at the snowy scenery outside the window, Jiang Xiao answered with a smile. After Fang Xingyun finished ordering, she returned the menu to the waiter and nodded politely with a smile. Then, she looked at Jiang Xiao and said, "You've been holding the file all the way here. What's in it?" Jiang Xiao came to his senses and opened the file with a smile. He said, "This is a magic weapon to persuade you." "Oh." Fang Xingyin looked at Jiang Xiao with interest and said, "Let me have a look." 5 minutes later, the waiter kept serving hot pot dishes. The copper pot in front of the two of them was also steaming. However, Fang Xingyun was still holding the recommendation letter in his hand with a look of disbelief. "Wow!" Fang Xingyun exclaimed softly. He looked at the recommendation letter in his hand and then looked up at the little toxic healer opposite him. It seemed that he could not connect the person described in the recommendation letter with the little guy in front of him. Jiang Xiao shrugged and said, "The Wasteland Reclaimers are very strict. It's not because I'm close to him that he wrote this. What he wrote is the truth. I was able to get this letter because I met Instructor Qin's requirements during sparring. There's no falsehood in it at all. Teacher, don't worry." Fang Xingyin lowered her head and looked at the recommendation letter written by Qin Wangchuan carefully. "How do you address me?" Jiang Xiao was stunned for a moment and hurriedly corrected himself. "Sister Yin, don't worry. You know the quality of the Wasteland Reclaimers and the strict discipline of the army. This recommendation letter is authentic and the contents are not false at all." Fang Xingyin raised her head slightly and waved the recommendation letter in her hand. "Are all the star techniques in your 7-star slots true?" Jiang Xiao nodded and said, "Of course." So, Fang Xingyun stuffed the recommendation letter into the file and placed it beside her. She leaned forward slightly and placed her elbows on the wooden table while resting her chin on the back of her hand. There was a hint of mischief in her beautiful eyes. You've never lit up your star slot. Is it because you feel inferior, or are you afraid that others will feel inferior? Jiang Xiao was speechless. Chapter 474. Life was like a drama, and it all depended on one's acting skills. Jiang Xiao pursed his lips and said, I'm afraid of being mocked. My classmates all say that I'm a good-for-nothing and that I might as well not awaken my star map. Even those who haven't awakened their star maps are mocking me. Most of what Jiang Xiao said was true. Apart from the first sentence, the rest of what he said had really happened. Interestingly, most of the mockery did not come from the students who had awakened their star maps, but from the ordinary students who had yet to awaken their star maps. At this moment, Jiang Xiao could clearly analyze the psychological activities of the students. To put bluntly, they were jealous. Most 15 and 16-year-old children wanted to be star warriors. As for the final graduation ceremony, it was more like a trial to judge their future path. The star maps that many students dreamed of were not awakened, and the cold reality destroyed their mentality. Jiang Xiaopi, who had 9 star slots, also became the target of ridicule and mockery. What's the use of awakening? 9 star slots? If your qualifications are so low, can you acquire star techniques? You're probably a good-for-nothing, aren't you? It's a peculiar mentality to be able to infuriate others and laugh at others. Let's boil it. Fang Xingyun suddenly changed the topic when she saw Jiang Zhao's expression. Jiang Xiao picked up his chopsticks and looked at the copper hot pot in front of him. Is the soup in it really refreshing? There were a few pieces of ginger and spring onions floating on it, as well as a few pieces of wolfberries. It seemed bland no matter how he looked at it. Teacher Fang picked up a piece of meat and placed it in the pot. After boiling it for more than 10 seconds, she picked it up and stuffed it into her mouth. Jiang Xiao blinked and thought, how can it taste good? It doesn't even touch the sesame sauce. Sesame sauce is the soul of the hot pot. Fang Xingyun gestured to Jiang Xiao through the steaming hot air. Jiang Xiao imitated her and dipped it for 15 seconds. After counting to 15 in his mind, he picked it up, blew on it, and stuffed it into his mouth doubtfully. Oh my God, it's so fragrant. There's no need for sesame sauce. The meat itself is very soulful. Jiang Xiao chewed on the delicacy with a look of satisfaction. Fang Xingyun smiled gently and said, this is mutton hot pot. A small number of people don't want others to call hot pot. Jiang Xiao blinked. Fang Xingyun tilted his head and gestured at the small tray beside him, on which there were more than 20 kinds of porcelain bowls and small ingredients. With the development and evolution, mutton hot pot has become more and more exquisite. Jiang Xiao suddenly did not dare to move his chopsticks. He did not know where Fang Xingyun was going to lead the conversation. Fang Xingyun picked up a piece of meat and placed it into the copper hot pot. This dish was named by Yuan Shizu. When the enemy troops approached, Yuan Shizu insisted on eating mutton. Time was of the essence. The cook was afraid of being blamed, so he was quick-witted and threw the thin slice of mutton into the boiling water. When it changed color, he presented it to them. Fang Xingyun stood up and placed the lamb slices on Jiang Zhao's plate. So, perhaps the most important thing about this dish is to eat your fill and win the battle. Fang Xingyun pointed at one of the plates of meat and said, Yuan Bao meat. As she spoke, she pointed to another plate of meat. Cucumber strips. Jiang Xiao was confused. What? Through the white steam, Fang Xingyun saw Jiang Zhao's reaction and said with a smile, that's right. To Yuan Shizu, who's eager to go to the battlefield, they're all the same. They can fill his stomach and allow him to kill the enemy. Fang Xingyun pointed at the Yuan Bao meat and said, 30 star slots, rules awakened, Han Jiangxue. She then pointed at the cucumber strips with her chopsticks and said, 9 star slots, Dr. Jiang Xiaopi. Jiang Xiao finally snapped back to his senses. He had been attending classes in the Star Warrior Academy for half a semester, but none of the cultural classes left a deep impression on him. Jiang Xiao didn't expect to receive such a vivid lesson in the restaurant. Fang Xingyun continued, "Your positions are different, your star slots are different, and your talents are different. Everything might be different. However, to the country, as long as you're essentially the same and can fight for glory, there won't be any difference." Fang Xingyun smiled and said, "Don't care about how others view you. You just have to have a clear understanding of your own abilities. I can write a letter of recommendation for you and bring your team to me to impress me. Use your actions to tell me that you're the same as other meats and can fill my stomach." Jiang Xiao opened his mouth and said after a while, "I don't have a team. I only have myself." Fang Xingyun froze for a moment and asked in surprise, "You want to participate in the Singles World Cup?" Jiang Xiao nodded. Fang Xingyun stared at Jiang Xiao for a long time. After confirming that Jiang Xiao was not joking, she put down her chopsticks and picked up the folder again. She then took out the letter of recommendation and carefully checked Jiang Xiao's star technique combination. Participating in the Singles World Cup was fundamentally different from participating in the team competition. The requirements for the contestants were completely different. She had already carefully looked at Jiang Xiao's star technique just now and had to admit that as a support, Jiang Xiao had good healing, endurance, and control abilities. He also had a precious star technique like the space-time rift that allowed him to escape from the battlefield. That indirectly increased the team's tactics and provided more choices for the combination. As a team battle doctor, Jiang Xiao might not have many star techniques, but his combination was rather reasonable and he was completely competent as a team support. However, the Singles World Cup was different. No one could help Jiang Xiao make up for his shortcomings and take care of his other shortcomings. Fang Xingyun thought to herself, "Oh no, you should have said so earlier that you would participate in the Singles World Cup. Oh dear, I'm screwed. What if I made a mistake in my lecture just now? You're a support. Why are you participating in the Singles World Cup?" Fang Xingyun looked at Jiang Zhao's star technique combination for a long time and was surprised to find that it was rather promising. She thought about it carefully and said, "Instructor Qin wrote that you're at the peak of the nebulous stage." Jiang Xiao nodded and said yes. Fang Xingyun frowned and asked, "When did you advance to the peak of the nebulous stage? Are you confident that you can advance to the galaxy stage within 4 months?" Jiang Xiao said meekly, "I just advanced to the peak of the nebulous stage this morning." Fang Xingyun's slender hand stiffened slightly. Jiang Xiao picked up his chopsticks and pointed at a plate of meat. "Yuan bao meat." He then pointed at another plate of meat. "Eggplant strips." Jiang Xiao sighed and said, "Don't care about what others think. You have to have a clear understanding of yourself. You have to pursue the essence of things, as long as you can fill your stomach." Fang Xingyun looked at Jiang Xiao and rolled her eyes at him. "Where did you get the eggplant strips from?" Jiang Xiao scratched his head awkwardly and thought, "Did I remember the name of the meat wrongly?" Fang Xingyun carefully studied Jiang Zhao's abilities and star techniques and said, "Since you're not confident about advancing to the galaxy stage, choose your remaining star slot well, and you can form a system of your own. Besides, it's completely different from the systems of other professions. What you're doing is unorthodox." Unorthodox? Jiang Xiao was speechless. Fang Xingyun put the recommendation letter back into the folder and said seriously, "However, the difference between the galaxy stage and the nebula stage is too great. You'll have to face opponents who are physically stronger than you and also have to face opponents who have more star techniques than you. The difference in physical fitness is the difference in essence, and the difference in the number of star techniques represents the diversity of tactics and star techniques." Jiang Xiao shrugged and said, "Being flashy is the style of children. Winning is the truth." That was true. Fang Xingyun nodded. After pondering for a while, she said worriedly, "I know you have a lot of experience in competitions, but the individual competition is different from all the competitions you've participated in. No one can take care of you anymore. You're alone." Jiang Xiao chuckled and said, "I'm not alone. I have a country behind me." Fang Xingyun was speechless. In fact, Jiang Xiao was thinking, "I'm not alone. There are 29 heroic souls behind me. as well as the 29 souls who have died. However, Jiang Shao didn't say it out loud. Second last did, which was what she speculated after understanding the cause and effect. In fact, Jiang Shao had never made his thoughts public, and even Han Jiangxue didn't know what his original intentions were for participating in the competition. Jiang Shao just wanted to silently put his thoughts into practice and fulfill his promise. Jiang Shao said, "I'm serious. Isn't this a joke?" Fang Xingyun could sense Jiang Zhao's persistence, and her gaze gradually became gentler. She smiled and said, "In that case, I won't be moved by your team. You'll have to move me yourself." Jiang Zhao's heart skipped a beat, and he asked, "How do I move you?" Fang Xingyun rested her chin on one hand and pondered silently. "Let me think. How should I test you? Why don't you just survive from my hands?" Jiang Shao suddenly stood up and cupped his fists at Fang Xingyun. "Goodbye. Woo woo woo. You're bullying me. Not only did I survive from Star Sea Auxiliary Qin Wangchuan, but you want me to survive from Star Sea Rules awakened Fang Xingyun. The demonic fire master of the Infernal Inquisition only used one star technique, and he almost smashed me to death in the Infernal Inquisition. How many star techniques does Fang Xingyun have? What kind of combat experience does he have? What kind of battle tactics does he have?" Jiang Shao turned around and left. "Hey, your recommendation letter," Fang Xingyun said. Jiang Shao froze in his tracks and turned around to reach for the recommendation letter. However, Fang Xingyun took the recommendation letter under the table and placed it on the chair beside her. "If you can't get my recommendation letter, don't even think about getting this one from Wasteland." There was a moment when Jiang Shao saw a mature and gentle woman who had a mischievous smile on her face. There was also a moment when Jiang Shao really wanted to give her a platinum blessing. Rather than saying that Fang Xingyun was testing Jiang Shao, it would be more accurate to say that Fang Xingyun was trying to verify his thoughts. That night, in the dimensional space of the Fire Source Mountain range outside the capital, a star technique that shouldn't exist in this space appeared, falling flames. It was as if Fang Xingyun had transformed into a giant demon flame master. Moreover, it was an enhanced version of the giant demon flame master. He summoned a greater number of meteors that were faster and more numerous. That night, Fang Xingyun and Qin Wangchuan were both shocked by a little toxic healer. The little toxic healer was holding a giant sword in his hand and dodging left and right nimbly. This little rookie at the nebula stage was calm and collected in the face of a natural disaster of the level of the end of the world, breaking through all the obstacles. He strictly followed the agreement and did not use the space-time rift to escape. He only used green light, complemented by his close combat techniques that had been brought to the point of perfection. He knocked away and smashed every fatal meteorite, enduring the impact of every flying rock. He seemed to be consciously calculating the gains and losses, avoiding serious injuries and using minor injuries in exchange for moving forward. He also seemed to be struggling and using his extraordinary sense of life and death to open up a path of survival in the sea of fire. Just like that, step by step, he walked through this purgatory that was filled with death. He broke through the layers of difficulties and obstacles. In the end, he stood in front of her with a sword. At this point, the question that had been bothering Fang Xingyun for several months was finally answered. She finally knew how Jiang Shao managed to survive in Judge Yan's trial back then. She also finally felt for herself how Jiang Shao relied on his powerful skills and determination to turn around and enter the infernal judge again to get a person out of the hands of the King of Hell. Whether it was in terms of movement technique or willpower, this child was qualified. That night, when the two of them returned to the southern suburbs of the capital from the dimensional space, it was already early in the morning. The school gate was already closed, and Fang Xingyun brought Jiang Shao back to her home. The exhausted Jiang Shao only woke up at noon. When he walked out of the bedroom, there was no one at home. He reckoned that teacher Fang should have gone to school. Jiang Shao wanted to help her clean up the room before leaving, but he saw a recommendation letter on the coffee table in the living room. It was different from the detailed introduction that Qin Wangchuan had given Jiang Shao. On teacher Fang's recommendation letter, there were only 8 words. There were only 8 words: great wisdom, great courage, great general style. Chapter 475. More than a week passed quickly, and it was already the beginning of March. Under Qin Huangquan's training, Jiang Shao ate the high-quality food specially made by the Wasteland Reclaimers and continuously enhanced his physical fitness. His goal was clear: to reach the galaxy. However, both Qin Huangquan and Jiang Shao knew very well that it was not easy to reach the galaxy stage. Otherwise, the galaxy stage wouldn't have become the dividing line between the Awakened and the Star Warriors. Below the nebula stage, there would only be 4 more usable star slots for each level of star power. After breaking through to the galaxy stage, there would be 8 more usable star slots for each level of star power. It was a dragon gate. After leaping over, one would be a tyrant carp dragon. Be it the total amount of star power, the number of star techniques, or physical fitness, it would all be a qualitative leap. If one couldn't, one would still be a carp king. Hence, from all angles, the galaxy stage was the lowest standard for a Star Warrior and also the most difficult hurdle. Most of the Awakened in the world were stuck in the nebulous stage. That was a very sad thing. In school, one was also full of confidence and high spirits. One used to scoff at the salespeople on the streets and the public officials in uniform. One thought that one's future was full of infinite possibilities and that one would be able to achieve great things and fulfill one's dreams. Until later, one joined the ranks of the ordinary people and lived an ordinary life while worrying about the daily necessities of ordinary people. Until one day, one woke up in the middle of the night and remembered the young self that was full of infinite possibilities back then. Jiang Shao didn't want to become that kind of person. He didn't want to regret not working harder when he was at the peak of the nebula stage when he was old. Hence, he kept running hard, until he was exhausted and his head was muddled. Then, he fainted on the track of the Capital Star Warriors School. The Capital Star Warriors School had been established for decades, and many things must have happened there. However, if the stadium was compared to a person, it would probably have a deep impression of the child regardless of what had happened there. Jiang Shao exercised excessively every day and did not have a goal like 30 or 50 laps. His body had reached its limit, and he no longer had the strength to climb back up. This was his daily goal. Due to Qin Huangquan's superb healing star technique, Jiang Shao did not have any hidden injuries, and he was touching and expanding his body's limit every day. During this period of time, Jiang Shao was the only one who maintained that training. His only comrade, the Wasteland Reclamation apprentice Gu Shiren, had been taken away by 2 Wasteland Reclamation instructors to break through to the Celestial River Realm. This young Master Gu, who had already reached the peak of the nebulous stage, felt restless 4 days ago. Qin Huangquan discovered it in time and took him away by 2 Wasteland Reclamation instructors. On March 3rd, Jiang Shao still did not receive a reply from Baldy Hu. Similarly, the ordinary Year 1 students who had gone out for training had yet to return. Jiang Shao also learned that they had gone to the Black Rock Mountain again. This time, it was longer than the military training at the start of the school term. He reckoned that the Year 1 students must have been living a tough life. Jiang Shao, on the other hand, did not miss his classmates. The key was that the deadline for registering for the school's qualifier was about to end on March 10th. The other participants were all Year 3 and Year 4 students who had already gotten their recommendation letters. Hence, they weren't as pressed for time as Jiang Shao was. Jiang Shao could not wait for teacher Hu Gu any longer. He might not be able to come back before the 10th. Besides, even if he came back, he might not agree to Jiang Zhao's request. Hence, Jiang Shao found another Wasteland Reclamation instructor through Qin Huangquan's introduction. He shared the same surname as him, Jiang Hong. Instructor Jiang Hong was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He was slender and about 1.9 meters tall. He had an ordinary appearance and did not show his emotions on his face. He was a man of few words and seemed to have even fewer emotions. There were a total of 3 groups of instructors on duty in the Capital Star Warrior Alliance. Due to the fact that the training location was relatively dangerous, each of the three groups had an instructor who would bring 10 wasteland reclamation apprentices out for training and escort them. Gusher and took another 2 instructors with him. At this moment, the Wasteland Reclamation Army stationed in the capital Star Warrior Alliance was in dire need of manpower. Hence, the military had no choice but to send another Wasteland Reclamation team to be stationed there. Now, there were only 3 other instructors who stayed in school like Qin Wanchuan. They were on duty together with the 3 additional soldiers from the Wasteland Reclamation Army who were on duty. Today, the 3 Wasteland Reclamation instructors happened to be on duty, but no one was willing to train a child or write a recommendation letter for him. They all had their own tasks. Qin Wanchuan didn't know if he had used his connections, but he finally found Instructor Jiang. Instructor Jiang Hong seemed to be very busy and did not communicate with Jiang Xiao at all. In fact, he didn't even ask Jiang Xiao to go to the training field. Instead, he called Jiang Xiao, who was running, over. To Jiang Xiao's dismay, Instructor Jiang Hong did not even state his request or his intention. Instead, he immediately started the fight and even took the initiative. If Jiang Xiao didn't recognize him, and if he wasn't wearing the Wasteland Reclamation uniform, Jiang Xiao might have even thought that he was a criminal. Qin Wanchuan was not present during the battle because he was on duty for Instructor Jiang Hong. After 3 minutes, the battle was over. It was hard to say that Jiang Xiao had lost because he was only charred and his actual condition was far from being as miserable as it seemed. However, it was also hard to say that Jiang Xiao had won because Instructor Jiang Hong did not give him a recommendation letter. From the beginning to the end, Instructor Jiang Hong only used 2 star techniques. As a rules-awakened Star Warrior, he didn't even light up his star map. One was teleportation, while the other was thunderbolt. The entire football field was filled with Instructor Jiang Hong's figure as he dodged all of Jiang Zhao's star techniques. The bolts of lightning that descended from the sky hit Jiang Zhao's body accurately every time. However, Jiang Zhao's diamond endurance made him invincible. However, he had to admit that Instructor Jiang Hong was truly ferocious. Jiang Zhao's diamond endurance was something that even bullets wouldn't be able to penetrate. However, his skin had been grazed by the lightning strikes time and time again. Well, of course, it was just a scratch. If it were a life-and-death battle, Jiang Xiao would definitely have a way to break out of the situation. He could activate his resentment, and perhaps he would be able to make the final decision. However, it was a battle of victory and defeat, not a life-and-death battle. Jiang Xiao could feel that Instructor Jiang Hong had shown mercy, but then again, who wouldn't? Neither of them exerted their full strength. Hence, from the perspective of whether Jiang Xiao had received a recommendation letter or not, Jiang Xiao had lost. The winner had been decided, but the life and death battle had yet to be decided. Qin Wanchuan was soon replaced by Instructor Jiang Hong. It took less than 5 minutes for Instructor Jiang Hong to return. He was unscathed, and even his clothes were neat and tidy. He then went back to his post again. From this, Qin Wanchuan roughly knew the outcome. It turned out that a forcefully picked melon would not be sweet, nor would it quench one's thirst. Because there were a lot of pesticides, it was easy to get poisoned. When Qin Wanchuan returned to the stadium, the scene in front of him was beyond his expectations. He didn't see a defeated child, nor did he see a desolate expression on Jiang Zhao's face. He didn't see Jiang Xiao suffering a painful blow either. He only saw a child whose clothes were burnt and his face was covered in blood. He was running with his head down. Apart from the fact that he had just gone through a battle, everything else was normal. Qin Wanchuan strode forward and caught up with him. It was his first time running with Jiang Xiao in a long time. Qin Wanchuan didn't heal Jiang Xiao because he knew that there was no need to do so. Jiang Xiao had already healed himself, but the blood on his face and body had yet to be wiped clean. He's a wasteland reclaimer, a soldier who prioritizes his mission above all else. Qin Wanchuan ran side by side with Jiang Xiao and explained, during the few minutes that I was on duty for him, the team of 3 members on duty consisted of 2 shield warriors and me, an assistant. The personnel configuration was not reasonable, so he rushed back. It's not about the 3 minutes. Jiang Xiao panted heavily. Sprinting at full speed was the average speed that he usually trained at. From the moment he stepped onto the field, I knew that I wouldn't get this recommendation letter. Qin Wanchuan asked, "What do you mean?" From the bottom of his heart, he doesn't think that I should participate in the competition. At this point, Jiang Xiao paused for a moment before continuing, "No one thinks that I should participate in the competition." Qin Wanchuan looked at Jiang Xiao thoughtfully without saying anything. Jiang Xiao continued, "In the eyes of the world, a child in the nebulous stage shouldn't participate in the competition." Jiang Xiao turned to look at Qin Wanchuan and continued, "An assistant shouldn't participate in the individual competition." Jiang Xiao said word by word, "That's what Jiang Hong thinks. That's what everyone thinks." Qin Wanchuan remained silent for a while before saying, "Everyone who doesn't know you thinks that way. I'm not. Neither is your teacher Fong." Upon hearing this, Jiang Xiao lowered his head and sped up again. Qin Wanchuan said, "Prove to them that you're qualified to participate in the competition." After hundreds of meters, Jiang Xiao, who was sprinting, said, "Of course." Qin Wanchuan said, "The 3 wasteland reclaimers who are qualified to be instructors will take turns to rest. They'll rest tomorrow. I'll help you invite them again. If Jiang Hong doesn't agree, there are still 2 other instructors." Hearing this, Jiang Xiao slowed down and finally stopped. "I want to apply for leave." Qin Wanchuan looked at Jiang Xiao, whose face was covered in blood, and his bright and determined eyes. He nodded gently and said, "Do what you think is right." In an instant, Jiang Xiao's figure flashed and disappeared without a trace. Qin Wanchuan looked around. There was no one in the huge stadium. The green field was full of potholes, and the turf that had been blown up made the place look even more desolate. Qin Wanchuan shrugged helplessly. However, he suddenly thought of something, and his pupils constricted. Did he misunderstand what I said just now? This kid probably went to look for Jiang Hong. A young man covered in blood suddenly appeared outside the office on the westernmost side of the first floor of the administrative building of Block A. All of a sudden, a soldier in the office stood up. Although he did not know what happened outside the door, he smelled blood. At the next moment, there were 3 knocks on the door. At the same time, Instructor Jiang Hong, who was sitting in the office, looked at the other 2 instructors and shook his head. He then said to the door, "Leave." As soon as Jiang Hong spoke, Jiang Zhao's voice sounded from outside the door. "Jiang Hong, give me 3 more minutes. A fair duel." All of a sudden, the doors of the administrative building opened and heads popped out. They saw a miserable young man standing in the corridor on the westernmost side with a knife in his hand. It was a huge knife. It was the office building of the Star Warriors instructors in Beijing. Similarly, there were also some students who worked and helped out there. Damn it, who is this? Is he that impressive? How dare he stand in the Star Warriors office building and clamor? That knife, is that Jiang Xiaopi? In front of him should be the Wasteland Reclaimer's duty room. What happened? Why is his face covered in blood? That's awesome. That should be the westernmost side of the building where the Wasteland Reclaimers are on duty. So, the Wasteland Reclaimer apprentice and the Wasteland Reclaimer instructor are fighting. In the office, the other 2 Wasteland Reclaimer instructors were also a little dumbfounded. Of course, they knew what Instructor Jiang Hong had gone to do just now. Judging from the current situation, it seemed that the kid had come knocking on the door. However, judging from the way he knocked on the door, he should still be rational. Of course, Jiang Xiao was rational. If he dared to teleport into the duty room with a knife, he would probably be executed on the spot. Instructor Jiang Hong silently pressed down on his duty cap and sat at his desk, as if nothing had happened. Jiang Zhao's voice sounded from outside the door again. "Then give me a time and place." In the duty room, Instructor Jiang Hong's slightly low voice sounded. 2 years later, at the Star Warriors Stadium, Jiang Xiao gripped the handle of the knife tightly. "I can't wait for 2 years, and I don't need to." A voice came from behind the door. "I can't give you 3 minutes, and I don't need to." All of a sudden, someone coughed beside him. Jiang Xiao turned around, only to see that it was the gatekeeper of the administrative building. He was standing in a hall in the distance, and waving at Jiang Shao. The old man said, "Student Jiang, Principal Yang has invited you up." Jiang Shao was speechless. Chapter 476. Jiang Shao, who was covered in scorch marks, immediately climbed up the stairs and arrived in front of Principal Yang's office. However, he was asked to wait for a while. He waited for an hour and a half. Principal Yang was undoubtedly a big shot, and Jiang Shao dared not leave without permission. Bored, he looked at the scenery outside the window and silently absorbed star power to replenish his star power. Although the vice principal's office was on this floor, there were also other teachers' offices. Anyone who saw Jiang Shao standing in front of Principal Yang's office with a knife would find it interesting. An hour and a half later, a young man walked out of the office. He looked about 21 or 22 years old and was tall and burly. He was obviously a star warrior. What made Jiang Shao excited was that he knew this young man, Zhao Wenlong. He was one of the main candidates for the Capital Star Warriors singles competition. According to the evaluation on the school's official website, he was ranked second in terms of individual combat strength and was a contestant with a high chance of being selected for the national team. Zhao Wenlong was 189 centimeters tall and had a head of thick, black hair that was trimmed short and neatly. His fringe was thicker and slightly curly in front. His dark eyes were glistening as he looked down at Jiang Shao and said, "Principal Yang wants you to go in." "Wow, what a fake Mandarin." With that, Zhao Wenlong strode away. He walked past Jiang Shao, leaving a gust of wind behind. In the office, Principal Yang was initially kind and amiable, but after seeing Jiang Zhao's state, he became even more curious. Jiang Shao waved his hands and said, Principal Yang, no matter what you think, I promise it's not what you think." Principal Yang gestured for Jiang Shao to come in and watched him close the door. He then asked with concern, "Are you getting used to life in school?" Jiang Shao scratched his head and said, "Yes, very much." Principal Yang asked, "Are you satisfied with the Wasteland Reclaimer apprentice training classes?" Jiang Shao nodded repeatedly. "Yes, I'm very satisfied." Principal Yang nodded and asked, "Did you have a disagreement with the teacher?" "It's not really a disagreement. He bullied the kids and ambushed me," Jiang Shao said aggrievedly. Principal Yang was stunned. "Wasteland Reclaimer instructor? Ambush you?" Jiang Shao explained. "With the help of my Wasteland Reclamation instructor, Qin Wangchuan, I was fortunate enough to ask Instructor Jiang Hong for a recommendation letter. He probably wants to compete with me, and I think I'll only be able to get the recommendation letter if I defeat him." Jiang Zhao's series of shoulds were rather confusing. In fact, Jiang Shao was also puzzled at this moment because he had no idea what Instructor Jiang Hong's criteria were. Could it be that he could take down Instructor Jiang Hong within 3 minutes? Jiang Shao was deeply doubtful. Principal Yang, on the other hand, cast aside the vague criteria and asked, "Do you want to participate in the World Cup? A recommendation letter from a practical teacher?" Jiang Shao nodded. "Yes, I've already received 2 letters. I still need 1 more." This greatly exceeded Headmaster Yang's expectations. 2 letters. Jiang Shao said, "2." Principal Yang pondered for a moment and looked at Jiang Shao, whose clothes were burnt and face was covered in blood. He suddenly smiled and asked, "Do they all rely on such a huge commotion?" Headmaster Yang, you've misunderstood." Jiang Shao hurriedly explained, "I just look like I'm covered in blood, and I'm holding a knife in my hand as if I'm going to cut someone up. Actually, I'm a good, law-abiding child." Headmaster Yang was speechless. Jiang Shao hurriedly leaned the knife against the corner of the wall. A kind smile appeared on his face that was covered in dust and blood. "Those white teeth, tiske. Jiang Shao continued, "I was standing at the door of the duty room just now and knocking on the door. Which bandit would politely stand at someone's door and then politely tell them that he's going in to cut them up?" Headmaster Yang nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense." Jiang Shao quickly organized his words and said, "I've been training in the stadium just now. This miserable appearance is also left from the battle just now." Instructor Jiang Hong suddenly came to the stadium, and without saying a word, he struck me with lightning the moment we met. I don't even know what happened, and he just showered me with lightning. Let me tell you, the lightning was crackling. It was really scary." Headmaster Yang was speechless. Jiang Shao wiped the blood off his face and said, "I look miserable, but I didn't lose. Electrotherapy and whatnot are useless for a child with a personality like mine. I can surf the internet and play with my phone whenever I need to. Anyway, I just reacted for being ambushed and was looking for a chance to fight back, but Instructor Jiang Hong ran away." Headmaster Yang said, "Ran away?" He ran away." Jiang Shao nodded in all seriousness. "When he came, he didn't say a word and just struck me. I was about to counterattack, but he ran away too. I was thinking that I was struck by lightning for nothing. My head is still buzzing now. I should at least ask him what his standards for a recommendation letter are." Headmaster Yang poured a cup of tea while looking at Jiang Shao and said, "Which World Cup selection team did you join? Why are you acting alone if you want a recommendation letter? Where's your team?" Jiang Shao scratched his head in embarrassment and smiled awkwardly. "I'm participating in the individual competition." Ahem. Headmaster Yang had just taken a sip of tea and almost spat it out. It turned out that the old guy was still rather steady. He forcefully stopped coughing and placed the small teacup on the table steadily. Then he started coughing. Headmaster Yang looked at Jiang Shao. In his impression, Jiang Shao was a mischievous boy who spoke in a rather exaggerated manner just now. However, Headmaster Yang saw seriousness on Jiang Zhao's blood-stained face. In his bright eyes, Headmaster Yang saw a trace of persistence. Headmaster Yang confirmed again. "Individual competition?" Jiang Shao nodded. "World Cup, individual competition." Headmaster Yang asked, "You just said that you've already received 2 recommendation letters from the Wasteland Reclaimer instructor?" Jiang Shao corrected him. "One of them was written by my instructor, Qin Wangchuan, and the other was written by Teacher Fong." Headmaster Yang asked, "Teacher Fong? Which Teacher Fong?" Jiang Shao replied, "Fong Xingyun." Although Headmaster Yang's expression did not change much, he was obviously stunned for a moment. "Fong Xingyun." Jiang Shao nodded and said matter-of-factly, "Yeah, Teacher Fong Xingyun." Headmaster Yang's expression turned solemn, and he confirmed again. "Capital Star Warriors, practical training teacher, Fong Xingyun." Jiang Shao scratched his head and thought to himself, "I still haven't had much contact with Headmaster Yang." After interacting with him for a while, Jiang Shao realized that the old headmaster is actually more talkative than me. Headmaster Yang got an idea and said, "Go and bring me the 2 recommendation letters. Let me take a look." Of course, Jiang Shao had no reason to turn him down. He turned around and picked up his knife. "Headmaster, wait a moment. I'll be right back." After saying that, Jiang Zhao's body flashed, and he disappeared with his knife. Headmaster Yang raised his eyebrows slightly and looked in the direction where Jiang Shao had disappeared. He then picked up the small teacup on the table thoughtfully. 15 minutes later, Jiang Shao, who had washed his face and changed his clothes, returned to the headmaster's office with a portfolio in his hand and knocked on the door gently. Headmaster Yang's voice sounded from inside the door. "Come in." Jiang Shao walked in with the portfolio, took out 2 recommendation letters, and handed them to Headmaster Yang's desk. Headmaster Yang first picked up Qin Wangchuan's recommendation letter and picked up the frameless glasses on the desk with one hand. He then put them on the bridge of his nose and read them carefully. He then asked, seemingly intentionally or unintentionally, "What was the star technique that made you disappear just now?" Jiang Shao answered, "Platinum time and space gap, the reward for the most valuable student in the championship." Headmaster Yang seemed to have read the content too. After all, Qin Wanchuan's recommendation letter had introduced Jiang Zhao's star technique in detail. While reading, Headmaster Yang secretly nodded and said, "It seems that Instructor Qin holds you in high regard." He wrote down in detail the reasons for his recommendation and attached your detailed information. "Xiaopi, it seems that you're more outstanding than most of your peers." Jiang Shao shrugged and said, My peers should still be in year 2 of high school now, so I think so. Principal Yang, who was wearing a pair of glasses, looked up at Jiang Xiao with a smile on his face. You're not what people think you are. On the contrary, your star map is extremely sensitive to auxiliary star techniques. Jiang Xiao did not respond to that. Headmaster Yang put down Qin Wangchuan's recommendation letter and picked up Fang Xingyun's. This time, he didn't need to wear glasses because the words written on it were very clear. Headmaster Yang's palms trembled slightly, and he slowly placed the 2 recommendation letters on the table before looking at Jiang Xiao. Jiang Xiao also stood straight and waited for the headmaster to speak. Who would have thought that the principal would lean back against the back of his chair and let out a sigh, as if he was filled with emotions. Xiaopi, let me ask you a question, Headmaster Yang said slowly. Please go ahead. Jiang Xiao looked at Headmaster Yang curiously. Headmaster Yang asked, What's the best result our country has achieved in the World Cup? Jiang Xiao said, First, we've won first place before. We've won 3 championships. In 1997, 2003, and 2007, Mu Yin and Mu Qianying, the 2 best soldiers from Xiangnan Military Academy. Linen, the legend of Shanghai Star Warriors. Headmaster Yang nodded and asked, Which other years have we achieved good results? Jiang Xiao blinked and said, I think we've only won 3 championships. Headmaster Yang nodded silently and picked up Fang Xingyun's recommendation letter. Teacher Fang is your senior. She graduated from Beijing Star Warriors University 12 years ago. Jiang Xiao raised his eyebrows. He wasn't sure about that. Headmaster Yang continued. Fang Xingyun has excellent grades and character. After graduation, she stayed in the school to teach. This year is already the 12th year she has been teaching. Due to her strong personal abilities, she has been a practical teacher since her first year of teaching. In the past 12 years, many students have asked her to write recommendation letters, but she has never written a single one. Jiang Zhao's eyes widened slightly in surprise. Headmaster Yang looked at Jiang Xiao with a smile and said, This is the first recommendation letter she has received in her 12 years of teaching. As he spoke, Headmaster Yang took out a piece of paper with the title of Beijing Star Warriors University. He wrote the word Zhuan on it and signed his name, Yang Chensan. Headmaster Yang smiled and waved at Jiang Xiao, gesturing for him to go over. Jiang Xiao swallowed his saliva and felt like he was dreaming. He seemed to know what was about to happen. Headmaster Yang put the 3 recommendation letters into the portfolio and placed them on the desk. He said softly, 12 years ago, Fang Xingyun was an outstanding student of the Capital Star Warrior Club. He represented the country and won the 4th place in the 2005 World Cup. Jiang Xiao felt his hair stand on end. For some reason, he had goosebumps all over. Headmaster Yang sighed and said softly, 12 years ago is indeed a long time ago. You were still too young back then. In this world, many people are just like you. They only remember the names of the champions. Or, at the very least, they should be in the top 3. Jiang Xiao pursed his lips and was momentarily at a loss for words. Headmaster Yang pressed the folder on the desk with one hand and slowly pushed it towards Jiang Xiao. Don't let her down. Chapter 477. Shocking. The toxic healer's poison flared up. His face was covered in blood as he slashed at the Star Warrior administrative building with his sword. Why is a hardworking teacher being chased by his students? Why is the door of the Wasteland Reclaimer duty room being kicked repeatedly? Is this a distortion of human nature or a loss of morals? Welcome to the large-scale lifestyle drama series, The Fugitive School Life of the Little Toxic Healer. Shocking. The Wasteland Reclaimer apprentice confronted the Wasteland Reclaimer instructor. The scene is extremely tragic. For more information, click on the second day of Jiang Zhao's imprisonment. The internet was already in a mess. The scene of him knocking on the Wasteland Army duty room in the administrative building with his giant sword had already been uploaded to the internet. Yes, Jiang Xiao was imprisoned. Jiang Xiao, who walked out of Principal Yang's office, not only received his 3rd recommendation letter, but he also received an order to report to the school's law enforcement captain, Hei-chung. Although Jiang Xiao explained to Principal Yang that he was being polite and wanted to communicate with the Wasteland Reclaimer instructor, his image was not good. Moreover, he did not go through the access control and did not follow the normal procedures. He directly flashed into the administrative building, which was considered to have disrupted the order of the school. Then, Jiang Xiao was sent to the detention room by the law enforcement captain, Hei-chung. Here, he met the cute little mushroom-haired Xiaola again. Xiaola had already become an immortal. Unlike most of the Year 3 and Year 4 students, she did not participate in the training with the team. Instead, she stuck to her post. She had also said that she was a civil servant and would go on the path of teaching and educating people in the future instead of fighting. These mischievous prisoners were perfect for her to practice and accumulate experience. When Jiang Xiao was imprisoned, Xiaola was overjoyed. She even clapped her hands, and the poems of 1,000 families in her arms fell to the ground from that moment on. Jiang Xiao knew that the rules of a disciple subject was over. Xiaola was now focusing on poetry. However, to be honest, Jiang Xiao was more interested in ancient poetry than in the rules of a disciple. At this moment, in the detention room, Jiang Xiao was leaning against the iron window and looking at the scenery outside. Prison Chief Xie's joyful voice suddenly sounded from the iron door behind him. "Xiaopi, Xiaopi, it's time for your lesson." The iron door was immediately opened, and Xiaola ran in with a small plastic stool in her arms. Jiang Xiao turned his head silently and looked at the excited little mushroom. He had a feeling that she was going to say, "I'll go ahead and explore the way, Sai." Jiang Xiao shook his head helplessly and walked past Sheila. Xiaola ignored Jiang Xiao and continued to sit on the plastic stool. She flipped through the book and said excitedly, "I just found a particularly artistic and beautiful poem." Jiang Xiao walked to the door of the solitary confinement cell and closed it tightly with one hand. The brother on the other side had already been taught a lesson by Xia. Her voice was very penetrating. The brother on the other side probably didn't want to make up for it anymore. Enter Rui Creek and become a king. Sheila sat on a small plastic stool and read aloud in a serious manner. Why is the sky and the water everywhere? In clouds rose from the distant peaks, and the sun flowed back. The chirping of cicadas makes the forest quieter, the chirping of birds on the mountain more serene. This place stirred the thoughts of returning home, wandering in sorrow and weariness for many years. Jiang Xiao was speechless. Wow, it's really beautiful and artistic. The last few lines really sublimate the whole poem. Xiaola waved at Jiang Xiao and said, "Come over and read it with me." "Oh." Jiang Xiao walked back and sat on his bed while reading with her. His thoughts had already drifted away. Principal Yang gave him a letter of recommendation, but it was not for him to represent the national team directly. It was just for the qualification to participate in the school's internal selection. In other words, it was still uncertain if Jiang Xiao could represent the Capital Star Warriors. Even if he was selected for the school's team, it was still uncertain if he could be selected for the national team. There were still 2 to 3 obstacles in front of him that he had to overcome one by one. Principal Yang was not a practical teacher, but he was more qualified than other teachers to recommend students. Back then, Jiang Xiao and Han Jiangxue were specially recruited by Principal Yang. On the day that Principal Yang met the two of them, he expressed his expectations to Han Jiangxue, hoping that she would grow well and train hard so that she could become the pride of Capital Star Warriors in 2 years and represent China in the international competition. In other words, Principal Yang was in charge of this area. Of course, he had higher authority and qualifications. In fact, Jiang Xiao felt that a letter of recommendation from Principal Yang was worth 3 letters of recommendation from a practical teacher. Principal Yang's words also made Jiang Xiao ponder deeply. Don't let her down. How can I not disappoint Teacher Fong? How can I live up to Teacher Fong's expectations? It was undeniable that Teacher Fong's test for Jiang Xiao was to recreate the scene of the incident at the 923 Court of Fire. She was searching for an answer, In the process of searching for it, she saw a tenacious and unyielding young man who was willing to risk his life. Just like what was written in her recommendation, he was wise and brave, and had the demeanor of a great general. Jiang Xiao had some other thoughts in mind. Teacher Fang's recommendation letter was definitely related to that incident, and it might also be related to the fact that the siblings had been locked up in her space for several days. Of course, it would be useless to recommend them if they were not truly capable. They would be eliminated in the school selection. However, Jiang Xiao didn't want to embarrass Fang Xingyan. She came in fourth in the Singles World Cup 12 years ago. She had never written a single recommendation letter in the 12 years she had been in the school. Jiang Xiao didn't want to ruin Fang Xingyun's reputation. Of course, Jiang Xiao also knew that Fang Xingyun did not write the recommendation letter purely out of sensibility. From any perspective, Fang Xingyun was a powerful star warrior. She had her own judgment. There was no need to belittle himself. Jiang Xiao felt that he could do it. Now, he just needed star beads that could purify and output. He really needed them. At the very least, Jiang Xiao should make up for this weakness of his before the school selection began. Only then would he have a greater chance of breaking out of the school, going to the nation, and then the world. Xiaopi, Xiaopi. Xia Allah's voice sounded. Jiang Xiao snapped back to his senses and saw the fuming Xia Allah. Xia Allah's almond-shaped eyes were wide open, and her cheeks were puffed up. She held onto the poem of 1,000 families and glared at Jiang Xiao angrily. You skipped out. Jiang Xiao hurriedly shook his head. No. Xia Allah closed the book and sat on the small plastic stool. She put her hands behind her back and asked with a serious expression, What's the next line of cicada clamor in the forest of tranquility? Jiang Xiao said, Xia Allah stood up, rolled up the book, and used it as a stick. She then gestured at Jiang Xiao's head and said, Cicada clamor in the forest of tranquility. Jiang Xiao stammered. Barking dogs make humans happier? Bang. Xia Allah pinched her waist angrily and asked, How did you get into Star Warriors University? Jiang Xiao covered his forehead and said meekly, Guaranteed, guaranteed. Xia Allah was speechless. Seeing that Xia Allah was about to go berserk, Jiang Xiao frantically said, The chirping of birds makes the mountain more tranquil. The chirping of birds makes the mountain more tranquil. Teacher Xia, don't be angry. I remember now. Xia Allah glared at Jiang Xiao angrily and asked, You're tempted to return here? Jiang Xiao didn't dare to be mischievous, for fear that Xia Allah would say, Never underestimate the power of the Scout Commandment. He hurriedly added, Long years of sorrow and weariness. Sheila nodded her head in satisfaction. Knock, knock, knock. There was a knock on the door of the cell. Xia Allah turned around curiously and strode towards the metal door. She tiptoed slightly and reached out to open the small window above the metal door. Don't disturb me when I'm teaching. Hello, little Allah. A gentle voice came from outside the door. Huh, Director Song? Xia Allah was stunned for a moment before opening the metal door. She saw 3 tall and burly girls blocking the door, facing the adorable little Allah. The scene was just like a scene of high school students blocking primary school students after school. We're here to visit you. I heard that the toxic healer has caused you trouble again. Song Chuanxi smiled gently at Xia Allah with her bright eyes. Xia Allah opened her mouth wide, as if she had seen a goddess descend at her doorstep. Song Chuanxi looked into the cell and waved at Jiang Xiao. You're back. Jiang Xiao was overjoyed. Song Chuanxi was back, which meant that Han Jiangxue and Xia Yin, who were in the same team as her, were back too. All of a sudden, a beautiful figure appeared behind Song Chuanxi and looked at Jiang Xiao with some reproach in her eyes. Jiang Xiao smiled awkwardly at Han Jiangxue with an embarrassed expression on his face. Xiaopi, I heard that you went to cut down the school's office building. Another figure appeared behind Song Chuanxi's other shoulder. Jiang Xiao froze for a moment. A bald girl popped out of the crowd. She's not bald, but isn't her hair a little too short? Why did she cut her hair into a buzz cut? Hey, demon. Jiang Xiao pointed at Xia Yin and yelled, Change your profile picture. Who are you using a couple's hairstyle with? Xia Yan's face stiffened, and she pushed Song Chuanxi away with one hand before knocking Xia Ala, who was blocking the metal door. She then dashed in and said, I didn't even rest after returning to school. The first thing I did was come to see you. Yet, this is the first thing you say to me? Hey, be gentler. Xia Ala, who had been pushed away, stomped her feet angrily. Outrageous, impudent, unreasonable. 5 minutes later, Han Jiangxue and Song Chuanxi left. They had agreed with Xia Ala to pick Jiang Xiao and Xia Yan up the next day. Yes, due to Xia Yan's unreasonable behavior, she was thrown into the cell next door by Xia Ala and the prison guards. She became Jiang Xiao's cellmate and was grounded for a day. That night, Jiang Xiao stood in front of the iron window and looked at the bright moon in the sky while softly singing a song that had once been popular all over the country, Punishment for Impulsiveness. In the cell next door, Xia Yan almost kicked the door open and barged in again. Unfortunately, as soon as she walked to the door, she saw Xia Ala sitting on a small stool and leaning against the wall, sleeping soundly through the small window of the iron door. Then, Xia Yan turned around and walked back to the iron bed. Through the window, she could vaguely hear Jiang Xiao singing softly. This is the best punishment for impulsiveness. Ha ha. Chapter 478. At 8 a.m. the next day, Jiang Xiao and Xia Yan walked out of the solitary confinement cell together. These two guys were very troublesome for Xia Ala. Xia Ala could have gone back to the dormitory to sleep at night, but because of these two guys, Xia Ala had to sit on a small plastic stool and sleep against the wall opposite the cell door for the whole night. Song Chuanxi was very good at taking care of people. When he came to pick them up, he even brought Xia Ala porridge with pork and century egg and dumplings. Xia Ala was overjoyed, as if all the fatigue from the previous night had been wiped away. On the other hand, Jiang Xiao was also looking at Han Jiangxue with great emotions. Girls go through changes every day. He wondered which dimensional space the instructor of the Wasteland Reclaimer took Han Jiangxue to train. She seemed more and more like a star warrior. Temperament was something that was hard to describe, but it was something that truly existed. However, Han Jiangxue and Song Chuanxi did not change much in terms of appearance, but Xia Yan did. She actually got a buzz cut. After regaining his freedom, Jiang Xiao asked Xia Yan curiously, "What's wrong with your hairstyle? Why do you suddenly want to cut your buzz cut?" Xia Yan glared at Jiang Xiao angrily and said, "When I was fighting in the dimensional space, there was a small accident. My hair was all burnt and torn off. I looked terrible, so I decided to cut it off. It's all right. It'll grow back in a few months." Hearing this, Jiang Xiao looked disappointed and gloomy. "Didn't you want to form a couple's hairstyle with me? Was it all wishful thinking on my part?" Xia Yan ignored the drama queen beside her and put her arm around Jiang Zhao's shoulder. She tilted her head and looked at Jiang Zhao's head. "Huh, you've grown taller again? You're almost catching up to me." Jiang Xiao sneered and said, "Haha, I'm not chasing after you. I didn't cut my hairstyle because of me. What's the point of chasing after me? Feelings are mutual. I'm the only one who has to give. It's too tiring." Xia Yan was dumbfounded. On the way back to the dormitory, Song Chuanxi asked, "I heard that you went to ask for a recommendation letter?" Jiang Xiao tried his best to pry Xia Yan's arm away from his shoulder while answering, "Yeah." Song Chuanxi looked at Jiang Xiao and said in amazement, "The whole school is going crazy about you participating in the World Cup. I thought it was just a rumor, but I didn't expect it to be true. The team that Wu Yao introduced you to?" Jiang Xiao shook his head and recalled Wu Haoyang's words. He couldn't help but say, "Ferocious beasts always travel alone. Only cattle and sheep gather in herds." Song Chuanxi, Xia Yan turned to look at the expressionless Han Jiangxue. Jiang Xiao panicked and hurriedly added, "Of course, it's just that most of them travel alone. Lions are also ferocious beasts and social creatures." Song Chuanxi, Han Jiangxue said softly, "Speak properly." Jiang Xiao said obediently, "I'm going to participate in the individual competition in the World Cup. I don't need teammates. Wow. Xia Yin widened her eyes and stared at Jiang Xiao in disbelief. I don't even have the ability to participate in the individual competition. You're just a rookie. I'm not a rookie, Xia Yin. Now, I'm the toxic healer of Beijiang. 4 months later, I will be the toxic healer of China. Song Chuanxi, this world was indeed like that. In a province, you could say which city or county you were from. In the country for business trips, you would say which province you were from. When you go overseas, you would say which country you were from. Jiang Xiao looked at Xia Yin and said, "How about it? You want to give it a try too? There are still 4 days left before the deadline for registration. You just have to get 3 recommendation letters." Xia Yin shook her head repeatedly and said, "I know what I'm capable of, so I won't go overseas and embarrass myself. If there's a duo competition, I can pair up with you, but I'll forget about the individual competition." Huh, gotcha. You still say you don't want to be a couple with me? What a hypocritical woman. But then again, the combination of one fighter and one support is indeed very strong. Why isn't there a duo competition in the World Cup? Wouldn't it be even more intense if they fought together? It would definitely be fun to watch. Xia Yin seemed to have fallen into a beautiful fantasy. Activate the halo of nostalgia for me at the back. I'll activate the body of star power and go all out. On the way back to the dormitory, Jiang Xiao still planned to chat with Han Jiangxue about the recent situation, but he was stopped by Qin Wangchuan, who had rushed to pick him up. Feeling helpless, Jiang Xiao had no choice but to agree on a dinner time with Han Jiangxue and leave with Qin Wangchuan. Seeing that Qin Wangchuan's anxious expression didn't seem to be fake, Jiang Xiao had no idea what happened. Could it be that Instructor Jiang Hong is going to give me 3 minutes? Haha, I don't care about your 3 minutes. If I have the time, I'll go and memorize an ancient poem with Little Allah to enhance my cultural heritage. Wouldn't that be great? To his surprise, Qin Wangchuan brought Jiang Xiao back to the dormitory and took out a piece of paper from his pocket before handing it to Jiang Xiao. Jiang Xiao's dormitory was empty. The ordinary students had yet to return from the Black Rock Mountain, and Gu Shi and had been dragged to break through to the Galaxy Realm. Hence, Jiang Zhao's 4-person dormitory had become a single-person dormitory. Jiang Xiao grabbed the piece of paper, and his eyes glistened. Is this a list of star beads? Qin Wangchuan closed the door of the dormitory and pulled Gu Shi's stool over. He then sat down and said, "I heard that you've really gotten 3 recommendation letters. You have to strengthen yourself now. You have to be careful about your last star slot." The Wasteland Reclaimers had provided some star beads, and Qin Wangchuan was waiting for Jiang Zhao's reply. In fact, regardless of what Jiang Zhao's answer was, Qin Wangchuan already had an answer in his heart, and he would guide Jiang Xiao to choose the most suitable one. Qin Wangchuan thought that he had given Jiang Xiao a lot of star beads, but in fact, Jiang Xiao had already seen the list, because the Guardians of the Night had also given him those star beads. Jiang Xiao sighed and thought, it seems that there are only a few types of star beads that can be used for purification and output. However, one of the star beads was one that Jiang Xiao had never seen before. Jiang Xiao was overjoyed. Spirit of the Centaur? Qin Wangchuan seemed to have foreseen this scene. He remained silent and did not respond. Spirit of the Centaur star bead, platinum quality, techniques, 1. Spirit of the Centaur, bow, gold quality, summon a spirit bow. 2. Spirit purification arrow, gold quality, launched into the sky. It can scatter into a beam of light and purify the target area. 3. Spirit hunting arrow, gold quality, launched into the sky. It can scatter into a rain of arrows and attack the target area. 4. Spirit binding arrow, gold quality, launched into the sky. It can spread out a spiritual net and continue to bind the target. 4 techniques in 1 bead. 4 gold quality in 1 star bead. There's output, purification, and control. Jiang Xiao was tempted. It was because his archery skills were not bad, and he had already reached the threshold of silver quality level 9. Jiang Xiao said excitedly, "These star beads are really powerful. Give me 10 of these star beads. Given my star map's compatibility with the auxiliary star techniques, I'll at least be able to absorb the spirit purification arrow or the spirit-binding arrow, even if I can't absorb the spirit-hunting arrow. Afterwards, a bucket of cold water was poured on his head, and he felt a chill run down his spine. 10. Qin Wangchuan said, "This star bead comes from the Sky Sea Island dimensional space in Greece. It's a star bead that's strictly controlled in Greece. It's extremely difficult to get the right to enter the Sky Sea Island, let alone foreigners." Jiang Shao was so infuriated that his nose almost became crooked. "Why are you showing it to me? Just to make me envious?" Qin Wanchuan looked at Jiang Shao and shrugged his shoulders suavely. He said, "Didn't you ask me to help you find those that aren't available on the internet? Our team has such information, so I copied it for you. In fact, there are also star beads from Africa and South America in this list. I was afraid that you'd be too envious, so I deleted them." So what does he mean? Is he just showing it to me? To prove the strength of the Wasteland Reclaimers? Qin Wanchuan smiled and said, "Look at the back." Jiang Shao raised his eyebrows and saw a type of domestic star bead, golden couple star bead. Golden couple was a creature of another dimension that came from the dimensional space at the top of the ancient tower in Zhongyuan province. Golden couple star bead, gold quality 1. Immobility. Silver quality immobilizes the ability to move, slightly increases defense, immunity to 2 negative statuses, repulsion and dizziness. 2. Golden rod, gold quality strikes, dispels the haze, and uplifts the mind. Jiang Shao was extremely confused about it. Jiang Shao asked, "These 2 star techniques seem like auxiliary star techniques no matter how I look at them. Where do they come from?" Qin Wanchuan's answer was even more interesting. The golden rod star technique seems to be a purifying star technique, but in fact, if you find the right time and hit the right place, you can kill someone. Jiang Shao was speechless. At this moment, Jiang Shao suddenly had the urge to thank Sun Shaosheng. "Thank you for not killing me." At the beginning of the first semester of Year 1, there was a student named Sun Shaosheng who went to the Black Rock Mountain with him for military training. The rod that she was using should be the golden rod star technique. During the process of being hit several times, Jiang Shao would always be in a positive state of clarity and calmness. He didn't feel like he'd been hit in the head. Think about it. If Jiang Shao was in an intense battle with the Black Flame Ghost and Black Flame Demon, and Sun Shaosheng accidentally turned the purifying golden rod into a beating stick, Jiang Shao would probably not even know how he died. Qin Wanchuan looked at the list and said, "Think about it." "Think about what?" "Auspicious Beast Star Bead? Giant Rock Spirit Star Bead? Golden Couple Star Bead? Or the Spirit of the Centaur Star Bead that I can only covet?" There are really very few star beads that can be used for both output and purification. There are only 3 or 4 types in the vast land of China. Besides, these star beads are already very flawed. The attack of the Auspicious Beast Star Bead is passive and uncontrollable, and the purification effect is to shorten the duration of the negative effects. The output of the Giant Rock Spirit Star Bead is qualified, but can only purify oneself and not the whole group. The Golden Rod Star Bead is a different approach. It's clearly a purifying star technique, but it's used for sneak attacks? Is it an output star technique? In the end, Jiang Shao pointed at the last line on the list, Tear Spirit Star Bead. There is a range of output and negative effects, a range of purification, and even a range of domain that belong to him. To Qin Wanchuan, it wouldn't be a loss for Jiang Shao to absorb any of them. To Jiang Shao, it was inevitable that he would absorb all of them. They were much better than the spirit of the Centaur Star Bead. Qin Wanchuan snapped his fingers and had an excuse in his mind. He said directly, "It will be a while before the ordinary freshmen can return to school. I'll contact the 8 provinces' wasteland reclaimers now to discuss the training. Shall we make a trip?" Jiang Shao was overjoyed. Instructor Qin doesn't intend to give me the star bead directly. Instead, he wants to take me on a trip to train? Jiang Shao asked in delight. "The 2 of us?" Qin Wanchuan shook his head and said, "Wasteland reclaimers. Everyone." Jiang Shao was overjoyed. "For the first time, I'm going to meet up with my real teammates." Jiang Shao hurriedly said, I haven't reached the galaxy stage yet. Will it cause you trouble if you take me on a trip? Qin Wangchuan smiled and said, the battle between us has changed my opinion of you. Special support like you can't be judged and restricted by the galaxy threshold. Qin Wangchuan patted Jiang Xiao on the shoulder and said, since you've chosen to participate in the World Cup and you're a member of the Wasteland Reclaimers, as your comrade, I should do my best to support you. Jiang Zhao's heart was filled with gratitude. Qin Wangchuan patted Jiang Xiao on the shoulder and said, tell your teammates to be ready at all times. I'll be very busy today. Cancel the training. Keep the communication channel open and be on standby. Jiang Xiao answered yes. With that, Qin Wangchuan left. He tried his best to do everything. Of course, it was also because he was a Wasteland Reclaimer apprentice. Jiang Xiao is a Wasteland Reclaimer apprentice? In Qin Wangchuan's heart, this child was already his comrade. If the Wasteland Reclaimers could get a good result in the World Cup, all the Wasteland Reclaimers would feel honored. Everything was just like what Qin Wangchuan said when he persuaded Jiang Xiao to join the Wasteland Reclaimers. You want to be a night watcher and a Wasteland Exploring apprentice? Yes, you can work part-time. In the future, will you end up in the Guardians of the Night or the Wasteland Reclaimers? We will open up the Wasteland, and they will keep watch at night, depending on our abilities. 4 years later, we'll come to a conclusion. Chapter 479. Strictly according to the school rules, Year 1 students were not allowed to stay outside the school. However, Xia Yin and Han Jiangxue were both Wasteland Reclaimers. Although the practical training was arranged by the Wasteland Reclaimers and Han Jiangxue was also a World Cup contestant, the school turned a blind eye to it. That night, they did not go out for dinner and instead chose to stay in the apartment that Xia Yin rented in the Maple Forest estate. The last time Jiang Xiao came, it was during the final exams. At the mention of the final exams, a smile appeared on Jiang Zhao's face again. Kid, what's with that smile? You're up to no good. Wu Yao walked in from the kitchen with a can of beer in his hand and couldn't help but raise his eyebrows when he saw Jiang Xiao smiling on the sofa. You don't understand. Jiang Xiao shook his head. Someone's gonna wash my socks. Wu Yao humphed and plopped down on the sofa at the side. He raised his head and took a sip of beer before looking at the television, only to realize that they were watching a classic cartoon called Lotus Lantern on the movie channel. Meanwhile, Jiang Xiao and Xia Yin were seated on the sofa opposite the TV, watching with great interest. Wu Yao burped and asked, Hey kid, I heard that you're going to participate in the World Cup? Jiang Xiao stared at the cartoon intently and said, Yeah. Wu Yao turned around and couldn't help but glance at Jiang Xiao. Not bad, kid. Let's not talk about whether you'll be selected or not. Your courage is indeed commendable. Jiang Xiao sat up and reached out to pick up a bag of potato chips from the coffee table. He grabbed a few pieces and stuffed them into his mouth before chewing them. Look, hey, give me some. Xia Yin, who was slumped on the sofa, nudged Jiang Zhao's thigh with her knee. You'll eat too if I eat. You won't remember if I don't eat, Jiang Xiao said as he turned around to look at Xia Yin. Xia Yin widened her eyes and exclaimed, I'll eat. What are you eating for? It's almost time for dinner. Han Jiangxue suddenly opened the door and walked into the living room with a plate of stir-fried green beans in her hand. Two of you, bring the table over. Xia Yin looked at Han Jiangxue aggrievedly before getting up and walking to the kitchen with Jiang Xiao. Jiang Xiao had been sitting in the living room, watching television on the sofa and waiting for the maids to serve the dishes. When he entered the kitchen, he was delighted. He thought that it was Han Jiangxue or head chef Song Chuanxi, but to his surprise, it turned out to be He Su wearing an apron and stirring the ladle. Look at this technique, TSK. Jiang Xiao had always admired those who could weigh spoons because they looked cool. However, Jiang Xiao had never learned or tested it before. How's Brother Su's technique? He Su asked with a smile. He shook the spoon again and turned to look at Jiang Xiao. Jiang Xiao smiled disdainfully. I'm just afraid of hurting you. My culinary skills have already reached perfection, and these fancy tricks are a piece of cake for me. He Su curled his lips in disbelief. He placed the peppers and bacon on a plate and said, You? You want me to assist you? It just so happens that I'm going to make your hometown dish, San Cien. I'm not qualified to help with such a small scene. Jiang Xiao picked up the peppers and bacon and chuckled. I even shake the dumplings at home. Hurry up and practice. Hisu was dumbfounded. Xia Yin, who was moving the table behind him, almost fell down. She stared at Jiang Xiao with widened eyes and asked, You even shake the dumpling soup? Why didn't it burn you to death? Song Chuanxi, who was cutting the vegetables at the side, almost missed her hand too. She had always been gentle, but she actually urged impatiently. Hurry up and get out, you two. Don't cause trouble. Jiang Xiao was speechless. Xia Yin was speechless. When the lotus lantern on the television ended and there were 6 empty beer cans on the coffee table in front of Wu Yao, the 8 dishes and 1 soup were finally ready. Everyone reunited again for the first time after the new year. They were also glad that they were still alive. That sentence sounded a little serious, but that was the reality. Jiang Xiao and Xia Yin sat next to each other, and since they couldn't move the table, they could only stare at the dishes in front of them. Perhaps because they had the same taste, the two of them stared at the pineapple sweet and sour pork at the same time. Jiang Xiao ate the meat while Xia Yin ate the pineapple. The two of them ate one after another and cooperated very well. In the end, Han Jiangxue couldn't stand it anymore and placed a plate of cold dish in front of the two of them. She then took the remaining half of the pineapple sweet and sour pork away. It's all your fault for eating so fast, Xia Yin said as she kicked Jiang Xiao under the table. Jiang Xiao glanced at Xia Yin angrily and suddenly thought of something. By the way, Xia Yin, what was your average score at the end of last semester? His voice wasn't soft, and everyone at the table looked over curiously. They weren't curious about Xia Yan's results, but rather why Jiang Xiao was speaking so loudly. Xia Yan's face stiffened, and she said, I forgot. Jiang Xiao took out his mobile phone from his pocket and said, It's okay, I'll check for you. Xia Yan forced a smile and said, I forgot the password for my school's website. Jiang Xiao chuckled and said, It's okay, I'll remember it for you. Under the table, Xia Yin reached out and pinched Jiang Xiao's sleeve. Xiaopi, stop checking. Let's eat. Eating is more important. Eating is more important? Isn't it important to wash clothes? Isn't it important to wash socks? Song Chuanxi seemed to have noticed something fishy. Smiling, she picked up her glass and said, We've been eating together for a long time. I forgot to congratulate Xiaopi for getting 3 recommendation letters. Hisu also looked at Jiang Xiao in awe. He picked up his wine glass and said, Impressive, impressive. Wu Yao nodded and said with a look of approval, I wish you success in the school selection. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Jiang Xiao picked up his beer, while Xia Yin heaved a sigh of relief. She had been given a reprieve. After downing a glass of beer, Jiang Xiao said, By the way, your joint training will have to wait for a few more days. Our Wasteland Reclaimer Team 1 is about to go on a mission again. Huh? Song Chunchi looked at Jiang Xiao curiously and asked, Why didn't I know about this? Jiang Xiao said, Instructor Qin Wangchuan told me to be on standby at all times. It's the first time we're going on a joint mission together. Song Chunchi frowned slightly and looked at Xia Yin. Change it to juice. Jiang Xiao waved his hands and said, No, he said that he's very busy today and will give me a day off. We'll be on standby tomorrow. Han Jiangshu suddenly said, You haven't reached Galaxy yet, so it's not suitable for you to train with us. Jiang Xiao pursed his lips and said, In fact, I'm not the one training with you guys. The 3 of you are the ones training with me. Our destination this time should be Baman Province. Instructor Qin is going to take me there to absorb the Tear Spirit Star Bead and train you guys so that you can see the world. Han Jiangxue frowned and asked, Tear Spirit. Xia Yin grabbed Jiang Zhao's mobile phone and opened the search engine to search for the unfamiliar star bead. She had never learned about that star bead from the books. I found it. It's a specialty of Baman Province, Egret City, and Brahma Temple. There's only one shop in the entire country that produces it, Xia Yin muttered excitedly. Jiang Xiao said, Don't look at the encyclopedia on the internet. It's not accurate. Look at my memo. There's an accurate introduction to the Tier Spirit Star bead. Huh? Xia Yin froze for a moment before exiting the webpage and opening Jiang Zhao's memo. Tier Spirit Star bead, gold quality, star technique. 1. Cleansing tears, silver quality through crying. Summon a rain of tears that is filled with star power. Within the range of the rain of tears, purify all negative states. 2. Tears of sorrow, gold quality through crying. Summon a rain of tears that is filled with star power. Within the range of the rain of tears, burn the vitality of the target and cause all the targets within the range to feel depressed. 3. Tears of domain, gold quality through crying. Summon a rain of tears that is filled with star power and create a tear domain. Jiang Zhao's expression was rather unnatural. He had long known about the specific star technique of the Tier Spirit Star bead, but what made him displeased was why it had to summon a rain of tears through crying. Do I have to cry every time I use a star technique? Does he want me to cry on the stage of the World Cup in front of the eyes of millions of people all over the world? Xia Yin carefully studied the introduction of the star technique before raising her head and saying, "This introduction isn't detailed. Why isn't there an introduction to the tear domain?" Jiang Zhao shrugged and said, "Instructor Qin brought me there because he wanted me to see it with my own eyes and experience it for myself. I hate people who keep people in suspense the most," Xia Yin said while muttering. Han Jiangxue murmured thoughtfully, "Domain. This type of star technique is very rare." Everyone at the table shook their heads one after another. The students were all elites who were not only students from the Star Warriors Academy in Beijing, but also students who were going to participate in the World Cup. Even they had never come into contact with star techniques of the domain level. That was enough to show how precious and rare star techniques were. Jiang Zhao said nonchalantly, "Guess and speculate. It's a domain, the tier domain." Everyone looked at Jiang Zhao and waited for him to continue. Jiang Zhao scratched his head and asked in bewilderment, "Be myself in the rain?" Everyone was speechless. Xia Yin was clearly hurt by the sudden change in direction, and she almost got a shortness of breath. Wu Yao's eyes were full of envy. Wasteland reclaimers indeed have resources that ordinary people don't have. Jiang Zhao said, "If you want to join, wait for the next batch. You're definitely strong enough." Wu Yao raised his head and downed a can of beer. "Forget it. I'd better go travel around the world." Hisu picked up his glass again and said, "In that case, I'll wish you success. May Xiaopi be able to absorb this precious tier domain star technique. Bring it back and let us see what kind of star technique it is." Jiang Zhao picked up his glass and downed his beer in one go, after which he gestured at Hisu to accept his blessing. Song Chuanxi and the others were not clear about Jiang Zhao's ability, but Xia Yin and Han Jiangxue were. Absorb the precious tier domain star technique. Not only can my toxic healer absorb all three, but he can also upgrade it. When the time comes, what you see might not be the precious tier domain star technique, but the unique, high-quality, improved, and upgraded tier domain star technique. Han Jiangxue looked at Jiang Zhao and thought to herself, those three abilities seem to have perfectly solved Jiang Zhao's shortcomings. He's really going to take off. Jiang Zhao acutely noticed that Han Jiangxue was looking at him and turned his head to look at her with a smile. Go ahead and smile. Hurry up and smile more now. You're going to become a crybaby in the future." Xia Yin muttered, "You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.